You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
Mommy's going to the beauty parlor, darling. But I'm leaving you with your favorite friend, Roger. He's going to take very, very good care of you. Because if he doesn't, he's going back to the science lab.
During his 10 years in prison, Jack Deebs created his own world. It made him very successful.
You're Jack Deebs, the creator of Cool World, right?
I can't believe this.
Now he thinks he's going home to the real world. But he's wrong. Real wrong.
Welcome to my world.
You're not in Kansas anymore.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on. Invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. And at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
I am very excited because we are going back to spooky mode, everybody, next week. So join the sleaze.
That's right. We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover as well. Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and two bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for 5 or 6 years. We have like 140 plus bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series where we talk about new release genre films that are coming out. And so if you're interested in that, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. And speaking of which, we did have quite a few people make the jump this week. We're getting their shout outs here. We had Dillard's Department sign up for $5 a month. We had Preston Hansen. We had Big Titty Goth Trad Wife. we had Luke.
Welcome aboard.
We had Trevor Tremaine. We had David Punton. It's always nice when someone takes advantage of the fact that I have to read these out loud. We had Ben Gonzalez. We had Chris. We had Matthew Eden. We had Eric Hawkins go from $5 a month to $10 a month and is joining us for monthly virtual screenings that we try to do at the last Thursday of every month. We had Brittany Day sign up for at $5, and we had, last but not least, Owen sign up. I hope all of you folks are enjoying the bonus episode. Thanks so much. We appreciate the support.
Yeah, thank you very much.
That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you were listening on either one of those platforms, and I see the stats, I can see you right now listening on both of those platforms. Give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the very last plug, as always, is merch. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for our show, you can get that put on basically anything that you can think of. And you guys have thought of a lot of things. You have bought notebooks, you have bought pillows, you have bought pens, hoodies, just posters for your place. The link to that is in the description of this episode, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com for anyone who's interested. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I think 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks over on the main feed would have heard from us, and we would have had a very big special episode with the both hosts of the Blowback podcast, Brendan James and Noah Colwyn, who are gearing up for the new season of their show on the Afghanistan war. So we invited them on to talk with us, a double feature of 80s Red Scare Rambo knockoffs made by some legitimate right-wing psychos. We talked John Milius's Red Dawn, which is still maybe the most overtly and famous anti-communist quasi-family action film about American kids basically becoming mujahideen freedom guerrilla fighters, and was a production that was overseen by a literal Nixon-Reagan era U.S. Army general, as well as the guy who inspired the Dr. Strangelove character. So pretty crazy there, but and surprisingly not as crazy of a production even as the following film that we paired it with, Joseph Zito's Red Scorpion from 1988, which starred our boy Dolph Lundgren, who we always love talking about, but did have one of the most evil production histories we've maybe ever covered on this show, which is actually saying something, because it was a film that wasn't just trying to have a message or an agenda in favor of the South African apartheid government, but it was actually produced by Jack Abramoff, who took money from that government and actually shot it during apartheid, and using South African military equipment as part of the production, and actually shooting near, like, basically where executions were happening.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, protesters during the filmmaking were killed. Like, it's just it's a pretty unbelievable production to look at. It was really nice to pick the brains of the Blowback Boys, though. They are incredibly knowledgeable. It's insane.
Yeah, so it was great to talk about the merging of history and great art in the forms of Red Dawn and Red Scorpion. So if you haven't heard that episode, that was 2 weeks ago, back over on the main feed. Go back and check it out. But last week, over on the Patreon feed exclusively for the patrons, we took a bit of a left turn away from action cartoons, and we talked some actual cartoons, but some exploitation X-rated ones made by the notorious or genius filmmaker, whatever your view of him, Mr. Ralph Bakshi. We talked about his transgressively horny origins with the smash X-rated hit Fritz the Cat, which was his attempt to bring Robert Crumb's very vulgar, satirical attempt to bring the hand-drawn animation of the 30s and 40s into a psychedelic, politically and sexually liberated, like, post-Mad Magazine countercultural 60s, and had a lot of cats masturbating, a bunny rabbit whipping his dick around, Mickey Mouse cheering on the napalming of Harlem.
Next to Minnie and Donald Duck.
A lot of wild images in that film, and we paired it with his attempt to bring that adult animation sensibility that, you know, he really felt passionate about to a more traditional children's fantasy sword and sorcery movie called Wizards. While, you know, which is still, you know, doing kind of like a Tolkien-esque sort of quest in the broad strokes, but still in the detail, kind of giving it some violent, horny, political polemic edge to it.
It has like stuff fairy hookers and like the actual protagonist, the woman protagonist has just, you know, huge boobs that are just hanging out the entire time. So it's very still.
She's hanging out with a cigar smoking wizard who sounds like Columbo, and they're on a mission to take down like a guy who's using, you know, Nazi propaganda to start like a second Holocaust. It's, you know, there's some crazy and there's some gory rotoscoped battle sequences in it. You know, Ralph Bakshi was insane.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I preferred that one over Fritz. Both were good, honestly. He's a very interesting filmmaker, so it's nice we get to, you know, maybe talk about him a little later on in this episode.
Yeah, so if you haven't heard that episode, that was over on the Patreon feed last week, and patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast for anyone interested in that. But that episode was, as Jamie was alluding to there, pretty strategically planned, because we've been wanting to go cartoon mode a little bit on the podcast, because it's kind of something we haven't talked a whole lot about. I think heavy metal prior to these two episodes is probably some of the, you know, the only actual, you know, animated films that we've talked about, and there is so much animation. You know, through the eras that we like to talk about. Animation is some of the earliest film that's out there as well. So this week, to have that conversation with us and to actually get into these wild animated and live action crossover films, we have a very special first-time guest joining us. He is a comedian, he's an illustrator, he's a comic artist known for his series Hell Was Full and his character Swan Boy, who I believe even got his own short television show at one point. He's written stuff for the Cartoon Network, he's had illustrations in the New Yorker, and he's also just one of the best writers on Letterboxd for all of the golden age of animation shorts that are all out there for anyone who's interested in that stuff. And that guest is Branson Reese. Branson, how you doing?
I'm doing great now. You just gassed me up. I feel fantastic. Thank you.
That's what we like to do around here. Welcome to the Sleazoids guest rotation. I've been meaning to get you on here for a while, and I'm glad you agreed.
I gotta say, well done. Thank you. I feel like a big shot now. This is what a way to. I can't wait to talk about film now with you. I'm so excited to talk about these films. I feel like I listen to all these movies, all these film podcasts. Everyone always talks about cartoons, and I'm right there. You know, nobody ever asked me on to talk about cartoons. Well,
no, I knew we had to have you because I occasionally like to go, you know, every once in a while I get in the mood and I'm like, I am feeling like going down the rabbit hole of some 1940s or 1930s animation shorts. And it, you know, every once in a while I'm just like, I'm going to watch like, you know, I'm going to sit down. I'm actually going to watch like 4 or 5 of them just in a row and just, you know, go through a couple of the directors that I know, go through your Dave Fleischers or go through your Tex Avery's. And every single time there was one name that cropped up every time. Branson has logged every single one of these. And I was like, well, if we're ever going to talk about, you know, one of the films, especially today, I was like, well, we need someone who actually knows their history because the filmmakers obviously knew theirs. So Branson, as it goes, we have the guests bring the films with you. So what 2 films have you brought with you this week? And I probably don't need to ask the second question, but I will anyway. Why did you pair them together?
Sure. Yeah, it's going to be extremely obvious. For honestly, your listeners also, you already know what the title of the episode is, so there's no need for me to drum it out. It's I brought in 1988's Who Framed Roger Rabbit, directed by new Hollywood introvert Robert Zemeckis. And I also brought in 1992's Cool World, directed by living pervert Ralph Bakshi. And yeah, I paired them together because you asked me. You were like, hey, you know, hey, we'd love to have you on the show. What would you like to talk about? And I was like, honestly, and I brought Cool World to you. I didn't even bring Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I was like, I've got this, like I've got the devil in me, you know, and I need to exercise it. And that devil's name is Cool World. It's just a movie I saw pretty young, not when it came out. I would have been like 5 or 6 or whatever when it came out, or 4. I would have been 4. I'm not that old. I would have been 4 when it came out. So, and I wasn't allowed to watch it because my parents aren't lunatics. That would have been a irresponsible choice to show this to a child. But I saw, you know, then I saw it on my own in like 5th or 6th grade, and I was like, I feel like I'm going to go to jail. You know, it's just like it's an evil feeling movie. And obviously, it exists in the shadow of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit comes out in 1988. It's this like genre bending, like the technology for the time was unheard of. You had Richard Williams, the animator, doing most of the movie on the ones. It's this incredible movie, critically acclaimed. It's a big hit. And then, what is it? 4 long years later, Ralph Bakshi says, I want a piece of that pie.
That's
Here
right.
is a similar premise, but it's not as clear. It's not as narratively clear. And it's if we took like the Jessica Rabbit scenes and we cranked them up so high that the dial started to like get hot to the touch.
Yeah.
And so they have a lot in common. The movies exist in conversation.
It's real actors hanging out with cartoons, double feature, but they're also both, I will say, both are using a history of crime films. Both are weirdly violent and horny little slapstick creations. You know, so you know there's definitely a similar sensibility outside of the fact that, you know, 2 directors really liked old cartoons and wanted to bring them back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. I said they were in conversation. They're in conversation with each other the way that, like, if you're on the street and a guy drives by you with his window down and tells you to kill yourself, like that, the way that's a conversation.
That's Cool World.
Yeah. Cool World is a lunatic screaming at you.
Yeah, there is some, and we'll get to the details, of course, but there is some subtext in Cool World that I don't think is even necessarily like on purpose here and there, but it just says certain things that seem questionable. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. These movies, I mean, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you know, pretty kind of a classic in a sense, at least maybe for our generation. And Cool World was something that I've wanted to watch for a while just because I saw the mix of animation and Brad Pitt, and I was just like, I didn't know that even existed. So yeah, looking forward to it.
I have a very vivid memory of being at the mall in Tennessee with my family as a kid and looking up at this huge Cool World poster, and it's like Brad Pitt, who it's like, who is he? We only know he's the scene stealer from Thelma and Louise, like him and this like babe, just this like drawing of a babe, and the tagline is Hollywood if she could, and she will. And it's like, I don't know what sex is yet, but I know like
I know
now
what they're trying to, yeah, it's kind of getting at here.
There's a whole generation of men who found out what sex was by watching Cool World, and yeah,
it's like, I always hear like guys my age, they're like, oh, Lola Bunny, you know, Lola Bunny was like my cartoon sexual awakening. Buddy, you were late. It happened 4 years earlier, and her name was Hollywood.
Oh yeah. Well, that being said, I think we are going to jump right into it here. Let's kick things off. Let's go. Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I'm a pig! I'm a tomb!
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way. But tell me, Eddie, is that a rabbit in your pocket, or you're just happy to see me?
Touchstone Pictures and Steven Spielberg present a Robert Zemeckis film.
We too may act idiotic, but we're not stupid.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
All right, we are talking Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the 1988 American half live action animation comedy noir directed by Robert Zemeckis, written by Jeffrey Price and Peter Seaman. Loosely based on the 1981 novel Who Censored Roger Rabbit by Gary Wolfe, and of course starring Mr. Bob Hoskins, the God, Charles Fleischer voice acting Roger Rabbit, Christopher Lloyd in there, as well as Judge Doom. And this is, I think, our second time talking about Robert Zemeckis, because we actually only talked about him for the first time a couple weeks ago when we were doing when the new Indiana Jones came out, because we finally want to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we thought he kind of made for an interesting pairing with Spielberg. Obviously, Spielberg kind of being his mentor in the industry, and Romancing the Stone was what we talked about, because that was kind of the movie that kind of saved his career. It came out before Back to the Future was the huge success it was, and he had already written Back to the Future and was shopping it around, but no one wanted it because they all saw him as box office poison for writing 1941 for Spielberg, and Used Cars, his other directed film, didn't do anything. So it took one man's flow, Mr. Michael Douglas.
That's right.
Who, through his producing power and his love of this meta concept script about a adventure novelist who kind of ends up in one of her own books, and Zemeckis finally finding a good shtick for his sort of like whiz kid techie engineering and like Mad Magazine kind of spoof energy that he kind of had, and he got to do a really wacky kind of adventure film. And I've said it before. I think I said it on the episode too, that my relationship with Zemeckis is kind of strange, because I like him. I think he is a very talented guy. He is one of those guys where he does have a lot of middling films for me, and he is the filmmaker who, when people are like, man, Spielberg and Lucas, they don't tell stories, they just love toys, they love engineering, and they love special effects, and that's all they do. And I've never really bought that about Spielberg that much, because the guy clearly just loves the craft so much, like outside of just like the actual filmmaking craft, like the stuff that we see in Raiders. And Zemeckis has always been more a filmmaker where I'm like, sometimes that applies to him. Sometimes you're like, he made this movie because he could do something really gimmicky or something kind of fun, or like that's basically it. And for me, his best movies is when his obsessions with his technology or effects or whatever he wants to do actually kind of comes together with the material that he's making. Even something like Contact 2, which has some of that sort of like science geek sentimentality to it that I think
a lot
works.
of it is just people listening to signals and frequencies and everything like that. But it is like the way he shoots it and the way he paces it is honestly fascinating.
Yeah, and so this for me has always been just 100% my favorite movie that he's ever made. The entire cartoon noir concept of this that takes the 1940s golden age of animation and all its colorful kind of zany glory and seamlessly merges it with this very exaggerated like noir pastiche of the kind of films that would have existed around the time that those cartoons were actually being drawn. And it's so gleeful in how he decided he wanted to to approach doing that. And it's literally a movie that's in love with like an older era of artistry and tech and trying to formally realize that and kind of express that. And Zemeckis apparently was offered, or he offered himself up to Disney to direct this, like when they were workshopping it in the early 80s. But again, no interest. They were like, you're fucking, we know that you know Spielberg and everything, but like, we want nothing to do with you. And at the time they were still dealing with the book, which was like more about comic strip characters like Dick Tracy and Snoopy and stuff. So there was a long time before this actually formulated into what it became. And it was after Back to the Future that they kind of went, yeah, maybe Terry Gilliam fits this movie a little less than our pal Robert Zemeckis over here. And I think also that was when they brought Spielberg on board, like Amblin Entertainment came on board to actually produce the movie. And you have a feeling that Spielberg kind of gave them a little nudge and was like, hey, my guy, his last 2 movies did pretty well at the box office, he like Lucas and I, he's willing to invent some technology for your film and, all that kind of stuff. And, he came back at them with the technical desire to pull off this mix, and I think the quote here is that he wanted to mix Disney's high quality of animation, Warner Brothers' characterizations, and the Tex Avery humor. And he was like, I want to take all of those things, the slapstick history of old cartoons, and what if it was also kind of like Chinatown at the same time? And he made one of just like the strangest movies that has ever been as good as this movie is. It made as much money as this movie did and won as many Oscars as this movie did. Like, it's actually insane how successful this movie is, considering how much it is just like a genre geek's kind of heaven.
I was just saying, on paper, it makes no fucking sense. Like, Men in Black away this movie from your memory, and then like I approach you, right, and I'm like, okay, I got an idea for a movie right now, and I pitched Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I'd be institutionalized. Like, it's like, yeah, good luck, dude. Like, that's not gonna happen. Like, even that, it's like such a called shot of like, I want the quality of Disney. I want the characterization of Warner Brothers and the comedy of Tex Avery. It's like, yeah, dude, I want to fly too. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, there is something about like the some of the sexual aspects of the film, and also the like heavily implied violence in here that I don't think Disney would touch whatsoever today. And even I think then they probably had a little bit of like caution towards it and everything, because they do break a few boundaries with this when it comes to that kind of PG rating. Like, we'll get to specific examples and everything, but there's a couple moments in here that I had friends, when we would talk about it, they were like, when I saw this as a kid, it legitimately scared the hell out of me. Like, there's the scene with the shoe. There's obviously Jessica Rabbit has been a pretty famous cartoon for young gents for a long time. So yeah, it's something else. It really is something very special.
Part of what I love about that,
very
though,
pre-Haze Code design.
Yeah, well, I was actually going to say that, like, some of the things I love about old animation, like I do love the golden age of, like I love the old Disney stuff as well. I love a lot of it, but the Warner Brothers stuff, especially, and the Fleischer stuff as well, like some of the things that make them as amazing as they are is that they are as much a horror as they are comedic or family friendly at times. Like I think Jamie, you saw, but I recently just rewatched Pinocchio. And Jesus. I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, and it was a movie that I found kind of creepy as a kid, but I didn't understand like why I found it creepy. And then when I was rewatching it like as an adult, I was like, dude, where are they taking? What are they doing? Where are they taking these children?
Yeah,
I was like,
all the implications in the dialogue, especially, are like incredibly adult and ominous. Or ominous. And like when I was a kid, I just remember thinking like, I don't want to get turned into a donkey. That seems really fucking terrifying. But then I rewatched it and I saw all these other things, and I'm like,
and you're like, wait a minute, this is actually about the predatory nature of adults and of show business, and like, and growing up and being sort of becoming aware of the outside world and like the dark things and frightening things that are, it was like all children's stuff. It's kind of designed to scare you you into learning a lesson, but it was definitely, they didn't have to go that hard,
Yeah, they went so
It is
hard.
bizarre to have a Disney movie from 1940 that was like, hey kids, that feeling when you're at they're in malls, you know what I mean? Like when you're at like the museum or wherever they had, like, when you're at like a big public setting and you briefly get separated from your mom and your face gets hot because you're about to start crying. We made a whole movie about that feeling.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're being separated from your father, your kindly old father, and like
who's stuck in a giant monster. Like, yeah, it's just it's terrifying stuff. And honestly, when you think back like to that time of animation, there is a lot more of that kind of just these more adult and scary themes kind of creeped into it. Now, I don't know about this was exactly designed for, but Josh, I saw that you recently watched it, and I haven't rewatched it, but I have seen it and I really like it, which is the it's called like Bimbo's Invitation or something like that.
Bimbo's Initiation.
Initiation, right?
Yes.
And it's incredibly
one of the greatest
scary
animated shorts that I've ever watched about this little puppy who just gets trapped in like an assembly line of paradoxical, essentially like saw traps. He literally just falls down a sewer drain. It lands in like a subterranean torture / sex cult, like run by Betty Boop in a bunch of robes. And the whole musical aspect of it is they're just like, wanna be a member? And he's like, no, after every trap. And it's so labyrinthian. It's so like gruesome in terms of like the level of violence they're threatening to hit Bimbo with. It's not just like, he'll get on a bike and then there's like a machine that slaps his ass over and over again. But there's like a sentient knife that's like literally licking its lips at the idea of stabbing into Bimbo's flesh. And it's just like, cartoons of that era, the thing that are so amazing is how they are horror as much as they are comedy. And also the lesson of half of them is that horniness eventually trumps violence in all of them as well, because one of the Popeye ones that I did that I was a little sad they didn't get the rights to in this one, because they did get some of the other Fleischer stuff, but the Popeye one that I did too, it's so funny. It's just two sailors like fighting over I can't remember the character's name anymore. She's great though. Olive Oil? Oil, yes. She's wonderful. I love her like little noodly mannerisms that she has and everything. But
Popeye stuff is really interesting. Fleischer in general, but like Popeye and Betty Boop both pre and post Code. Like nobody got hit harder in animation than the Fleischers, because they were, they were New York, they were edgy, they were. Bimbo's Initiation is essentially just Eyes Wide Shut, but like played much faster and for laughs. Like it's and so like they got hit really hard by this Hays Code, which was like, no, Barbara Stanwyck can't have sex in movies anymore, like that. And so they were like, well, fuck, we don't have anything to do. So if you watch a Popeye or a Betty Boop from like 31, like a Bimbo's Initiation, I believe is 31. Like it's nasty, like they're like, we're gonna kill you. By the way, we're sexy ladies, like, and then if you watch a Betty Boop from 4 years later, it's like, oh no, my boyfriend's in town, I have to make a cake. There's just no, all of the sex and jazz has been sapped out of it, which I think is a really fun plot point that I only noticed on my most recent, probably 6 years ago, is when I started to pick up on this in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I watched it a lot. That Betty Boop shows up in Who Framed Roger Rabbit as she's like a waitress, she's like a cigarette girl at the bar that Eddie goes to, and they have this whole history because he was like, he used to love cartoons, and so in like black and white pre-Code era, he would have been friends with Betty Boop, and they sort of imply that the Code is what has kept Betty Boop from like getting work now in this world. It's a very interesting like mapping game of like what the Code would even mean to these tunes, who are sort of like, obviously you can map a lot of different like races or gender things onto the tunes of like who they are, this sort of underclass of Hollywood. I think it's like a really smart move on the movie's part.
It is. Well, and just how engaged with the history of the genre is what's interesting. Like that's why we kind of had to open by talking about, Max Fleischer, Frank Tashlin, Chuck Jones, like all, like so much of their their not just their actual work itself, the production history around their stuff. Obviously, it's ingested so much of the sort of like clever, sophisticated kind of like silent era visual wordless gag storytelling that they loved so much from the Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin movies that they would have been watching. And, you know, and also taking in some of the, you know, some of the more absurd and surreal elements from Fleischer, the way that he uses gravity or some of the more rubbery movements. And, you know, they claim Tex Avery as the biggest inspiration as well, just for, you know, some of the ridiculous model breaking and, you know, and Disney obviously as well for the more sort of attention to the realism of it and the detail and the, you know, the very vivid designs and, you know, some of the watercolor expressiveness, I guess you could say as well. But
the squash and stretch.
Yes. Because
that's such a Disney thing, you know. That's such a Nine Old Men thing of like we squash and stretch so that the ball always retains the same amount of volume, so it feels real to you. But it's also like I think it's beautiful how this movie. It's like, you know, Roger Rabbit feels like a real guy as much as he can, but he like the Tex Avery takes are like built into the plot, you know, like when he drinks, he turns into a siren, you know, or like a rocket and he like explodes out of a window. That comes back later in the plot. They're like, oh, we can rely on this so steadily that now we're going to feed him alcohol so he can like get out of a tight spot. Very smart.
Yeah, and obviously all of that animation comes from, as Branson was saying, from Richard Williams, the Toronto-born animator who won the Oscar for Best Animated Short in the 70s for his adaptation of A Christmas Carol. He also did a Raggedy Ann feature, and he did some title sequences for the Pink Panther movies around then. And I guess in the 2000s he joined Aardman for a little while, and so he was doing.
Did he really?
Yeah, he was doing some of the stop motion animation work a little bit over there, and he was actually using one of the old Disney desks or something. I read that they brought in specifically for him. But he is doing some like genuinely very, very incredible pastiche work in terms of recreating this just like, you know, sort of like painstaking hand-drawn sort of like cell animation that is interacting with the sort of like darker film noir sort of thriller aesthetics that Robert Zemeckis is borrowing to create his, you know, sort of like old Hollywood sort of like conspiracy film out of this very comedic sensibility. And it works so well too, as I was saying earlier, because this animation was, you know, coming out during this period. Like these kinds of cartoons were actually what those people were watching in the movie theater when, you know, like Humphrey Bogart never does it in any of his movies, I don't think. But if he would have stepped into a movie theater, he might have been watching like a Popeye short and laughing his ass off. They just don't show that to you in you know, any of his Dashiell Hammett noirs or whatever he was doing.
Yeah, that's implied in A Lonely Place that he was just watching Popeye.
Exactly. And well, and it was so funny too because I was briefly in L.A. over the Christmas holidays, and I went to the New Bev and I saw Hitchcock's Notorious while I was there, which is just, you know, one of my favorite you know, sort of espionage noir films. It's so devastating, so well done. And before it, you know, the New Bev is kind of well known, I think, for playing a lot of you know, old shorts before the films every time and actually trying to like merge with the content of the film. And they played this Daffy short that I had never seen before by Frank Tashlin, where I think it was called Plain Daffy, and Hitler is using a bunch of sexy femme fatale pigeons basically against the Allies, so that, you know, so that the soldiers can't actually hit their targets because they're so distracted by this sexy pigeon. And then so the Allies call in Daffy because Daffy is a misogynist and a woman hater, and he would not fall for her tricks, and he will resist her seductions. It's a hilarious short, and it ends with him swallowing the Allies like secret scroll of battle plans, and Hitler literally like, you know, stretches him out and grabs an X-ray, and it's literally Hitler gets the X-ray, puts it in his stomach, and the scroll just says Hitler is a stinker on it.
Got him.
That's the plan.
Fuck you.
And I was like, oh my god, like people watch, like people act like characters in noir films would have like went to the theater and seen like that short, which is why like this isn't just like, here's two things I love that are unrelated. You know, this actually is like, you know, a very, you know, well thought out merging of these two genres. And on top of that, I don't think it's been done better since they did it. Like, it's just like the actual VFX work, courtesy of George Lucas and his team at ILM, working in tandem with Zemeckis and Spielberg. Like, it is just some of the best you will ever see. It's early use of motion control camera, which became kind of like the industry standard after this, to, you know, line up live action plates for the compositing work, where you could keep doing passes and the camera would just keep robotically doing the exact same movement over and over again, so that you could really line up frames perfectly. And it was having the cartoons interact with as much real stuff as possible, including props and, you know, various environmental destructions. Like, they were wire pulling people and elements from the scenes when like a cartoon character would, you know, be there crashing through the scene. And it just gives so much real world, surprising real world weight, I guess, to what these cartoon characters are doing, while still being incredibly stylized with the lighting and doing dynamic camera movement. And
it's you just know like about it's Swing insane. The Lamp, right? You've heard of the Swing the Lamp that comes from Who Framed Roger Rabbit? When they were filming it, there was I didn't even let you answer. I'm gonna barrel forward. They do it. They swing the lamp at one point when he's hiding out. It's during the scene where they're sawing the handcuffs, and he pulls his hand out. He's like, I can only do it. It was funny. During that scene, Roger Rabbit bumps his head on a swinging lamp, and that wasn't originally going to happen. And they decided to do it because even though that would take much longer to light the scene, because now if you think about it, you've got to recolor Roger Rabbit every new frame. And they're already doing the movie on the ones, which means, you know, there's 24 images in a second. Which means
such highly detailed animation, right? Yeah,
it's incredible.
Like, that's so crazy. It's not even necessary, but it's one of those things where it's like, if you do it, you're really, really going to merge with the live action footage, right? That's shooting at 24 frames a second. So it really does help sell that.
I don't think people would have necessarily noticed if they had done it on the twos, which is more standard, and at the time was more standard as well. But I do think doing it on the ones not only makes it merge better with the real life aspects of the film, but it also, that's how they did theatrical shorts at the time. They did everything on the ones. And so it makes Roger Rabbit feel more like one of these screwball characters that he is. You know, he's a screwy squirrel or a Woody Woodpecker, or he's got a little bit of bugs in him, but not a lot, or a Goofy, you know, like, and so they swing the lamp, but that means every new frame they have to relight Roger Rabbit. He has to be lit differently. It's nothing for Bob Hoskins because the light just hits him differently and you film it. But it's got so deliberate for animation. But they chose to do it, and that became like the thing during production was, well, we're going to swing the lamp here. We're going to work harder because it's going to make it look better. And there's all of these little moments in it where like they would build a mechanical rig, like when Roger Rabbit takes a drink. If you'll notice watching it, this drove me nuts as a kid, but now I appreciate it. His arm is a little thicker than it is otherwise, and it moves a little. He's got an elbow instead of a lot of. That's
literally because they have a little puppet arm holding the glass, right?
Yes, yeah.
So they're literally hand drawing over top of elements that they want to cover up in the frame of, because they would build entire sets where you would have puppeteers operating beneath the sets in order to like move objects, like when you see Mary Poppins penguins carrying little trays around, like actual little restaurant trays for drinks and menus and everything. Like those are real trays being floated around the scene by a puppeteer. And it adds to the interaction when that penguin then slams it on the table in front of Bob Hoskins and he's like, get the fuck out of here, you stupid penguin, or whatever, it's like that interaction feels so much more, like it's actually happening.
Yeah, it gives you that real feel of like physics, whereas and we'll get to details with Cool World, but there's a lot of moments in there where they try to do similar things, and you can just tell that Brad Pitt is massaging air or something like that.
He's not even like looking in the right direction sometimes. You're like, guys, come on.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, his eye level won't be correct. Like there's really no mistakes like that in this. It really is truly flawlessly done technically.
And what's crazy about this movie though is while they were filming, there were a ton of mistakes because Bob Hoskins had never seen Roger Rabbit. Because why would he have? It's like crazy to imagine that Hoskins and Roger Rabbit never met because it's not a real guy. Like he must have had like Bugs Bunny in his head, or just like it's going to be a cartoon rabbit. Right. And so Hoskins' eye line is all over the place, but rather than just like being like, close enough, they have Roger Rabbit. He goes up on his tiptoes all the time to match Eddie's eye line, so that he's actually looking at him, or he ducks,
or
he's running around
something,
the room.
Yeah, exactly.
And none of that care is taken in Cool World.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and they also had Charles Fleischer, who was doing the voice for Roger Rabbit, who I always think is hilarious because, Charles Fleischer's been in a lot of stuff, but he'll always be Mr. Creepy Zodiac Basement Guy to me. Totally. So it's very funny to go back to this movie and be like, that's who's doing the voice for that guy, and was on set like doing all of that voice acting so that Bob Hoskins could actually react to it like in annoyance when he's being ridiculous or really leaning into a joke in an annoying way or something like that. But it's a really amazing combination, and also worth bringing up Bob Hoskins. What possess? I mean, it's amazing. I love him. I love that he's in this. But like, you even have to wonder, like, at the time, like, what was the idea? He hadn't done Hook. He wasn't known for this kind. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, he mostly would have been known later. I was gonna say like Brazil, like Mona Lisa, like his British gangster film, The Long Good Friday, I guess, as
really
as well,
dramatic and kind of down films in that sense. Like it's pretty wild that he went into this, and then later on, of course, he he plays that a little bit when he's got to play like the sad detective and everything, but eventually he has to find that sense of humor again, and then you have him doing like stage show performances and stuff like that,
and he's killing it. He's so physically committed to this performance, and I'm so used to him as like the little barrel-chested ball of like British crime movie rage,
just angry energy.
For some reason, Spielberg was like that, and apparently it was Spielberg. He was like, I liked him. So like, there you go. So now he's the main guy.
I really do buy him, especially in the climax of like, I believe that Bob Hoskins grew, while I'm watching the movie magic takes me away. And I believe he grew up in this like Buster Keaton childhood of like getting thrown around on a vaudeville stage. Like, he really moves like a clown, non-pejorative,
Yeah. And you honestly, like, even in the more serious films that he does, that those gangster films that we were talking about, this high energy that he has, that it seems to be almost pent up, gives way to a lot of comedic timing, even when he's doing angry performances. So it is really cool to see him just do something.
Well, yeah, he's like the ultimate straight man comedy. That is grounding all of the ridiculousness that they are obviously like funneling around him, because you have Zemeckis, who is loving making this as ridiculous and animated. I mean, even the live action sets that they built are really exaggerated in terms of scale and in terms of look. Like, they almost do look like a live action cartoon version of a noir. Part of that is obviously Dean Cundy's photography of them as well, who's John Carpenter's cinematographer. We've talked a lot of the times, like, just seeing Dean Cundy get to recreate like a kiddie version of Chinatown is just like an amazing thing that exists, because like the actual environments and sets, they're tactile, they're textured, they're lit so beautifully. There's a nice little sort of like jazzy saxophone score to it. The movie itself moves with so much speed and energy. It's so formally inventive and planned and controlled, while still being, like freewheeling slapstick anarchy. Like, the way that this thing fucking opens is incredible. Like, it is just a straight up Warner Brothers Looney Tune short of Baby Herman and Roger Rabbit babysitting him, and it just gets that perfect energy of, like, he is told to watch this baby. There's even some dark detail where the adults, who you obviously don't see anything but their feet. And I love when the woman is like, no harm better come to that baby, or you're going back to the science lab, which is just like, that's a little dark history detail there, which moves immediately into like Baby Herman is like just getting across the room to get those cookies, and that awesome like baby slide animation along the like zigging tiles, and him climbing the fridge for the cookies, just unleashing all matter of sadistic chaos, like the stove fire getting lit, the baby hovering over the knives. Like, there's so much like implied child violence that is taking place in this, while Roger Rabbit is obviously doing all the slapstick gags to prevent it. He's doing ridiculous things like running along the carpet as it's just like, just piling up lines of wrinkles while he's trying to run as fast as he can. He's getting his head stuck in the kettle. I'm trying to think of, he slips on soap at one point. He gets stuck in the oven and cooked. The knives
oven,
gets crushed by a fridge. The volcano heat.
It's an interesting open because it's clearly these guys are like making this movie sort of about their childhood, right? You know, these things they loved as kids, and it really does have the tone of a cartoon remembered by an adult. Of like the tone, because if you actually watch cartoons of 1947, which is when the movies set, they don't move or look like this. Like they have the same spirit as this, but this whole opening, and it's incredible. If anyone hasn't seen it, please go watch it. Watch the other Roger Rabbit shorts; they're all really fun. But the whole thing moves at the fever pitch of like a Tex Avery climax that he would take like 8 minutes to build to, and it's just that the whole time. It's completely it's completely unhinged. It's a blast, but it's also like it is just a little bit of a way to like tip to the audience of like this is not exactly the same. You know, it's like the line about the science lab is like they didn't make jokes like that then. You know?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so like it's so quick and repetitive with its violence. Like there's one part where Roger Rabbit is just being slammed into a wall like over and over and over and over again. I think it's like 10 or 12 times or something like that. It's crazy. And I also like the transition in the very beginning here of the score where it's like it has the title where it has this kind of classic like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it's got the jazz saxophone going and everything, and then it turns into the Looney Tunes music that we know. And then it goes into what we're talking about, this opening cartoon. But then even that transitions into a set itself, and it's revealed that they're kind of, you know, they're actors. They're putting on a performance here, and it's not necessarily in this real reality for them. Like this is still a performance. This is a set and everything.
Yeah, they're coming up with a world where the cartoon shorts that you watch are actually shot by live action cartoons that live in Hollywood and exist in Hollywood, which is obviously just it's a really great shocking idea to when you immediately hit the soundstage, and it's like, oh, Roger Rabbit isn't like a drawing of some guy. He's technically like a stunt guy who's just like willing to get hit over and over and over. He's basically just Charlie Chaplin. He's just willing to get fucking used on screen. And Baby is the cut also to Baby Herman, who's obviously the adorable baby, but it's actually like a 50-year-old man who looks like a baby, and he just starts chain smoking and like, you know, he's like, I won't be in my trailer, you know,
he like smacks an assistant's butt or something. Like it's absolutely wild. And I also like the little details of their performances, like when he gets out of the fridge and they say it was supposed to be stars, not birds. So just that they have like this idea that the cartoons have this control over their wackiness and kind of like the zany imagery that they come up with to show the audience is like it's part of their performance. It's part of their talents or something like that. So yeah, there's just a lot of really fun and cool implications in this first opening, and the transitions are awesome.
Oh, it's just such an effective piece of storytelling to open. It's like, here's a cartoon. You're in that world. You've already heard the jazz saxophone, so you know it's noir. Now the cartoon. Then we break from that, and you get to learn all of the context of like, there are cartoons in this world. They exist alongside real people. The cartoons are not treated well. Some of them are misogynist. Like, let's go. You know, you're just like already.
They show the Fantasia brooms like actually sweeping the studios and stuff like that, and it's just
and the guy's playing the saxophone to make it work, like
right. And there's a ton of like, you see these recognizable, that's the thing too, recognizable animated characters that you know and love from your childhood being exploited.
Yeah, they had to work to get those rights. I mean, like on some level, you could maybe blame this for a lot of the sort of a cinematic universe glee that so many people have now. Sure. I don't think it comes across that way because like it wasn't really that at the time, and Disney was obviously a very different force in 1988 than it is now. But it was Spielberg and just his childlike interest that was like he had to go studio to studio, like convincing animators and convincing Warner and convincing the Fleischer Studios, like being like, I need to have all the rights to these characters, and he tried to get as many as he could, and so many of them make cameos. There were certain rules about how to use some of them as well.
Ones.
I know that.
Like I know
that the Warner Brothers guys were like, you can put us in a Disney movie, but like we need to have the equal amount of time to the Disney characters, and also like we can't have Mickey like being like, I'm better than you and like beating up Daffy or something, like like it needs to be like
do you know about the deleted scene from this movie?
No.
Oh my God, this is the most heartbreaking thing in the world. No, that's climate change, but you know, up there. There's a very heartbreaking. Originally, Marvin Acme's funeral was its own scene. And it was, I've seen the script for it. It's incredible. Foghorn Leghorn delivers the eulogy, and it's Foghorn Leghorn talking, baby. That's gold right there. But rather than the, I'm sorry, sort of stinker scene between Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse that we get in the movie, that's like a bit of a bummer after the dizzying heights of the Donald Daffy piano duel where neither win and they're both like equally
and they're
crazy.
Literally just trying to murder each other on the pianos. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
It's the most unhinged cartoons who have ever lived. They're just like, I'm out for blood, and they're just screaming. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's literally like what if they did like an Itchy and Scratchy episode or something.
Yes, yeah.
And
then later Bugs and Mickey show up and they're parachuting, and it's like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
they're just sort of cool.
It does kind of feel like when they got to Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse, both companies looked at them and just went, this is going to be the most just general scene so that there's no risk in either looking better than the other and anything like that. It's not like it's horrible or anything. It's just kind of boring compared to how they use the rest of the characters in that. And you would have liked to see big names like Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse doing something a little bit more interesting and maybe even, you know, kind of somewhat transgressive when it comes to like how they're using the rest of these things.
So originally they had that. That was in the funeral scene. Bugs and Mickey show up late, getting out of the back of a car with Bing Crosby and Humphrey Bogart, and they were playing golf with them. And they get out like dressed for golf, and they're late to Marvin Acme's funeral. How good was that?
That's perfect.
Oh, man. Whoever made the call to cut that, I hope goes to hell.
Yeah, that would have been far better because it would have been true to their character. It wouldn't have looked necessarily bad, but it still has those kind of heavy implications and everything like that. So
they're
think
the bad boy stars. You know, they can get away. They're hanging out with Humphrey Bogart, who's the top shit in 1947. They can do whatever the fuck they want.
Right.
Like, as a kid too, stuff. It always that always I was fascinated because it's like, even without knowing the backstory, I could sort of tell as a child something's up here. There's a reason we're seeing Donald and Daffy at all the exact same times. There's a reason we're seeing Tinkerbell and Porky Pig are both saying goodbye at the same time. There's a reason we're seeing Bugs and Mickey together. And I was like so amused, and I still am, that Droopy is alone. There is no equivalent anywhere. Droopy stands alone. He doesn't have any guy who can stand shoulder to shoulder.
Well, maybe if they had gotten the rights to Popeye or Tom and Jerry or all the ones, or any of the Terry Toons that I know that they tried to get the rights to, but they couldn't, which was who Ralph Bakshi did a lot of work for them. There was. So that was some of the stuff that they ended up not being able to get. But I do think that how well they created and like cleverly constructed a universe in which, you know, you can have cartoons in it and you can go back to your sort of like, you know, have the childhood glee of just seeing this thing that you maybe grew up loving and seeing it interact. And so it works on that surface level for people who want it, but also incorporating them in a legitimately kind of dark context of which Branson kind of briefly alluded to, where like the animated cartoon characters are called Toons. They have their own city in Los Angeles called Toontown, and they live their lives and work on movies and go to work like everyone else. But there is like this very, you know, like there is this social and political commentary to their inclusion, where they are obviously coded as kind of segregated minorities who, you know, are exploited by this entertainment industry because they are good at making us laugh. And there's, you know, people will hand over money for that. But they're also offended at the idea that these Toons would like actually cross the boundaries outside of Toontown or exist inside, you know, where real people, actually exist, and that there actually is kind of like a real life transgression to them being involved in real locations outside of like movie studios, because, you know, they're just stunt guys that we pay and they clean up their fucking destruction that they make, and they make us laugh, and they're useful for making money. And I think at one point too, like the one fucking head goes, and they work for peanuts, you know, it's fucking great, you know, like we could totally just exploit them. And the critic Dave Kerr actually actually had a really excellent observation in his review at the time, where he was basically like, the film like this entire idea is the film's like visual motif. Like, it's all, the movie has so many doorways and windows and tunnels and curtains and hiding places and peepholes, you know, like it was like, it feels like the movie is filled with, you know, elements designed to keep people and things kind of like apart from one another. And the whole point of the movie is that, you know, the cartoons have figured out a way to actually cross those boundaries in ways that he put it that was like both exhilarating and kind of frightening in the movie context they try to put it in, where it does have like a sort of like dark conspiracy noir element to it, where characters are murdered over real estate conspiracies, and it's such an insane world that they came up, while also indulging in the wonderful antics of, you know, Roger Rabbit being like, please, you know, Eddie, and you know, doing all the amazing things that he is doing. And so just like how well it does that, and, you know, actually indulges in the, you know, the broad story of these two worlds coming together to work in some form of like elastic harmony in some respects, which is obviously meant a little bit to, you know, be a counterpoint to the racist history of the medium itself that a lot of animators are quite open with. I mean, we talked about Bakshi last week and his use in Fritz the Cat of what are essentially the black crows from Dumbo. And having a black crow from Dumbo get shot by a literal pig cop alongside images of Mickey cheering on a, you know, U.S. Air Force plane napalming a poor black community as if it were Vietnam. So like, these animators are familiar with this kind of racist history and are, you know, and they you know, and so finding a way to even incorporate it into this and not go for, you know, like the crazy you don't have to do the crazy X-rated shocks of Ralph Bakshi to do that. Like, you can actually just kind of fit it into the story and make a friendly story about Hoskins, who is kind of, because of his history of having a, you know, being a private detective gumshoe, you know, who is basically a shorter or rounder, you know, Philip Marlowe or Ace Spade or whatever, who likes to work with Toons until, you know, we find out about his history with his brother, who was murdered by a Toon. And I love the detail of like, he dropped a piano on his head, you know,
it's
like the most vicious thing.
Murder.
The most vicious thing a cartoon can do to someone. And, you know, and
that would also work.
Yeah, and so that causes him to be like a hateful sourpuss towards Toons. He's depressed and he can't laugh at their jokes anymore. And he's, you know, he's an alcoholic who just goes, Toons, while he's like taking a swig of his whiskey and everything. It's just.
I love how even when this movie is down and dark, it is still, some of the biggest laughs in the movie are like when the montage, you know, when Eddie is passed out and you're just sort of learning about his history through visual, like old newspaper clippings. And you see one of his biggest cases was Goofy cleared of spy charges. Like, it's a low moment for Eddie, and it's one of the biggest laughs in the movie.
Huey, Louie, and Dewey kidnapped or something, and like, you know, or returned back to Donald from kidnappers. I wrote that one down too. Like, there's some weird, like, you know, again, merging it like LA movie history where, like, I'm sure some starlets' kids were probably kidnapped at some point in LA's history, and being like, what if that happened to Donald Duck? You know?
Goofy being like basically a communist in the headline was very funny. Cleared of spy charges. Like, just there's some really good stuff in here.
McCarthy was really going after Goofy. You could just see him in the court proceedings, you know.
I love how Goofy, speaking of Goofy, like Goofy as a character is like, you feel like the structural absence of Goofy in this movie. Like, you can tell Roger Rabbit like reveres him, and he is sort of
he's too much like Goofy is the issue. They even give him his overalls, right? Like, it's, you know, they were like, well, we can't really have him hang out with Goofy. He's so modeled after Goofy.
Get blown out of the water by Goofy. It's also why I don't think Screwy Squirrel or Woody Woodpecker, who he just has so much in common with certain cartoons, he can't be next to them, or you'll just sort of remember that it's 1988. You know,
he does kind of have that hyper quality that Woody Woodpecker has, where it's just like he's just moving all over the place, constantly kind of yelling and all of that, very fast.
Yeah, even though they were okay putting him with Bugs, because he has like similar cheeks and ears to Bugs, and you know he has a bunch of elements. Like he has some stuff taken from Mickey too. I think he has Mickey's gloves on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, he has a lot of, speaking of like the dark history
glove.
of cartoons, a lot of cartoon characters wear those gloves because of minstrelsy. It's the early cartoons with Bosco, who goes on almost every cartoon character. It just like, from the Rubber Hose era is just like Bosco with like different ears or different, leg length or whatever. And it's like, that's minstrelsy. These are minstrel characters that were like, that was how recently that was happening, and like at the dawn of these golden age cartoons. And so that's why to this day, a lot of cartoon characters still wear gloves. And it's like, it's a very unfortunate part of cartoons history.
Yeah, I mean, well, which is why it's smart to like incorporate it into the storytelling. If you're actually gonna, really revere this stuff, you have to have, you have to acknowledge kind of the context that it came from. And yeah, I mean, like I just rewatched the Tex Avery short "I Love to Singa," which is literally a parody of the jazz singer, right? So instead of Al Jolson, who was doing blackface in that movie, it's Owl Jolson, and he's just a little owl who loves to walk around and sing jazz songs.
Which is also like on its face, that is the most harmless cartoon that's maybe ever been made. And then the more you learn about it, the more it's like, oh no, it's ultimately it's built on a blackface thing. Like Jesus Christ, there's no getting out of it.
You can't escape it. You have to address it if you're gonna, really, if you want these hand-drawn delights in your movie, part of it, comes with the territory a little bit. And but this really gets underway when Roger Rabbit and Bob Hoskins actually get kind of forced to work together in a sort of like classic noir setting, because I think it's Roger is in a rut at the studio because his wife Jessica Rabbit might be having an affair with Marvin Acme, the owner of Acme, who creates all of the amazing toys in his factory that help all of the Toontown characters with their comedy, all the tools that they use. He loves playing gags with his hand shake shockers and invisible ink, the head of the cartoon studio is who brings in Eddie Valiant, played by Bob Hoskins, to basically take compromising photos of Jessica Rabbit or find out what it is that she is up to. Which he does by going into the Ink and Paint nightclub with this great dolly tracking 2D animation sequence of him making his way into this club. The penguins from Mary Poppins are working as the servers and carrying those real serving platters and everything. And actually, all the tunes we see are basically like working class servers, if they aren't like people who work on set, which is another sort of like class detail they're trying to fit in there. Obviously, you get Daffy and Donald having a piano playing competition in this scene on stage, really sliding along those fucking keys and like shaking the piano benches that they're on. And even the detail that always blows my mind is their reflections in the piano. Someone had to hand cell animate that piece by piece, that Donald and Daffy actually are playing those fucking pianos and popping out of them and shooting cannons at one another, doing some classic duck on duck violence.
Yeah, another really impressive one is when Jessica Rabbit's introduced too, and she does her first musical number, and she's going out in the crowd and doing like real crowd work with the real life actors. And we kind of mentioned it before, but there is again those like a real like a physicality, a weight to how she interacts with the real world. Like there's even a great moment where she grabs Hoskins' tie and like lifts it up and pulls him and everything like that. And it just
putting
amazing.
Shadows on the actors' faces of like her arm actually like walking by them or interacting with the spotlight lighting of the actual real world set and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you need to establish that because, like, Jessica Rabbit needs to be this. She's the I don't know. I guess in this, you wouldn't call her. I'm kind of still getting used to the noir terminology, but she's not technically a femme fatale in this, right? Because she's not necessarily. Like, it's almost a mix because she's almost presented as that at first, and then you find out not, I guess, in a sense,
like a subversion of a film.
But you need to believe that at the very least. So the use of the effects and the physicality of it all really helps sell that, and it's amazing.
They are playing it up in terms of how they animate her. I remember reading that they were basically like, yeah, she's Rita Hayworth, she's Veronica Lake, you know, she's Lauren Bacall, like all of these famous like femme fatale sort of like noir actresses. So you know, they were trying to be like, you know, this is the male fantasy of what a femme fatale is when they like go to sleep and dream of a cartoon. This is what it would look like. And you know, they accomplished that mission. Everyone's talking about it. The sparkling dress, the ridiculous form that they draw for her. It's just, I wanted to mention too, the Black Crows from Dumbo are also her band in the background. I was like, they're kind of throwing everything in here. But yeah, Jessica Rabbit doing the lounge singing routine is like kind of like, you know, and obviously Bob Hoskins, who is watching this and seeing the interactions, and you know, his eyes are practically popping out of his head. I thought he was going to do the like Tex Avery like wolf whistle, you know, like moment where he was gonna fucking lose it.
Because she is like from straight out of like Red Hot Riding Hood, you know, like she is just like a slightly exaggerated draw of one of those, like of those wolves, you know, of the wolves howling at that redheaded woman. I saw it fairly recently, even before this, like in a theater, and it got a big laugh. One of the actors, one of like the human actors in that scene, while she's like seducing Eddie, somebody in the not my audience, but in the movie's audience goes, "Oh!" Like he's like humming in his pants. It's such a funny reaction to her.
Yeah,
another detail I love in that scene is the penguins, because it's the Mary Poppins penguins, and like the movie goes out of its way to like let you know it's 1947 and really like put it in time. And you know, you've just been told too that like Betty Boop has been having trouble finding work. She's still black and white.
Yeah, work's kind of slow since the cartoons went to color, Eddie. But I still got the boop boop dee doop.
And I love that he's
kind of sad actually.
But you learn about him, you know, it's like, oh, this guy's he's got a history with cartoons if he and Betty are still on friendly terms, you know. But the penguins are from Mary Poppins, which is from 1964. Of course they're working as waiters. They've got like, I don't know, 17 years ahead of them before any sort of success is coming their way. You know, there's a million little details like that in this movie that are just like so like lived in. It really feels like a real movie.
Yeah. Every single scene, literally, unless it's a very important personal scene between two characters, is filled with cameos and little gags in the background, and it is honestly wild how much they fit into every single sequence. It's crazy.
And it's so I really don't think it can be overstated, like how still hilarious this movie is. Like there's so many jokes that I know are coming, and I've seen them like 10 million times, and when they eventually when they're making all the sexual noises inside the room, it's Jessica Rabbit and the obviously the owner of Acme, and you know, she was just
Stubby K.
Yes, and when you know, Hoskins wakes out of his daze of you know, her I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way like routine that she's got, and he goes to go get what he's been hired for, the private detective photos of her cheating on Roger Rabbit, and it's just them playing patty cake, and And he's just like, yeah, that's right, I caught her playing patty cake. He's like, you know, it's not the first guy whose wife's played patty cake on him, you know? And he's handing Roger the photos, and he's flipping through them, literally like animation frames. Like he took so many photos. Like it's like, you know, he's literally flipping like 24 frames a second as he's like ripping through these patty cake shots, and he's so distressed animation. And freaking out. It's so good.
And it's interesting too, because you do feel, you know, like in the sense that Roger Rabbit is a very likable character. He's designed that way, but he is also very obnoxious and kind of like, you know, abrasive and loud. And even when he's crying and he's having a scene of like, I've lost my wife, and he's on sitting on a dumpster looking at it in the middle of an alleyway, it's still hilarious in a sense, because he's just got such exaggerated mannerisms, of course, and he's just so he's so distraught to the point where you're like, oh my God, man, like relax a little. Holy hell. But it is it's very funny in a way.
Yeah, drink a glass of whiskey and then steam up the root and fucking explode the room. I do love that bit when he jumps through the window and he breaks through the curtain and window, and it is the shape of his body, which is obviously a great cartoon gag. You see it all the time where they smash into a wall and it ends up in their frame. It doesn't really physically make sense. And the fact that they did it on a real set and real environment in this, where they were like, yeah, the physics of him breaking glass that way doesn't actually make sense. But in this universe, Bob Hoskins will look at that and go, yeah, I mean, I've seen it in one of his shorts. So I guess that's just how he does it. That's how he rips through a building.
Yeah.
The philosophy this movie has about like props is so fascinating because it's airtight. You know, it really does make sense. It's like if a prop is from the human world and like could actually hurt, like a gun, like could hurt a human, and a toon is carrying it, it is not animated. It's a real gun that's like floating around. But later in the movie, there's a cartoon gun, which can't kill a person. It does a different thing, you know? It's like the gun with all of like the Western trope bullets. Like that is
hilarious.
A gun. Yeah. Like there's difference. Like if it's from the cartoon world, it is animated, and if it's from our world, it is not animated. And the movie,
the movie is actually weirdly interested in rules, but it is like economical about how it displays those rules to you. It just kind of assumes that you understand them because it kind of teaches it to you through the storytelling.
Yeah, some of my favorite, like one of my favorite moments is there's a chase and it's Bob Hoskins driving a cartoon car while the 4 cartoon gangster guys drive an actual van. And I just, there was something about that mix of animation that I really enjoyed it. And it was interesting just to think about how they would have had to apply probably different techniques to pull off both of those things chasing each other. Because it's very different, I imagine.
Oh my God. Look up, if you can, the behind the scenes stunt work on that. That is Bob Hoskins actually riding inside the tiniest dune buggy you've ever seen. He's holding,
and they cover it with the animation.
And he's holding an actual steering wheel and everything like that. But it is basically just like there's no doors, there's no protections. He's basically just flying around on 4 wheels, and there's a guy in a black suit inside the engine beneath him actually doing the stunt driving, because they didn't want Bob Hoskins doing the driving, because the whole point is the car is driving. They need Bob Hoskins's physicality, which is that he's lurching around because something else is driving and in control, and they need the spontaneous reaction of Hoskins like freaking out that they suddenly turn one direction or turn another direction. So Hoskins is really in the car doing all of that stunt work, but he is being he's on like a giant fucking like RC car basically.
Oh, wow.
with no protections of any kind that they just hand animated around, and it is fucking insane if you actually find that footage of him being, because like they're driving through real environments and everything. It's nuts.
That's awesome. I'll have to look that up, because I was curious how they pulled it off.
Even in the finished movie, he feels like he's in danger. You know, it doesn't feel like what's being done to Bob Hoskins is safe. That car, by the way, cut me off if this is boring, but that car, by the way, is modeled, I believe, I have no proof on this except like, come on. I think that car is modeled off of the car from Mickey's Rival. The short where Mickey's, I forget his name, but like Mortimer Rat, I think, shows up, and he's like twice the size of Mickey. And the short gets like sort of bored of Mortimer about halfway through, and it spends an inordinate amount of time with this car that looks and moves exactly like Benny from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So I think they pulled that car as reference for Benny. The same way that as a kid, I was very frustrated that the weasels weren't real in the way that like there were no weasel shorts I could then go back and watch because I liked them so much. But they're hilarious. A little bit based on the weasels from Wind in the Willows from, I think, 49, or the Disney short or the Disney film.
Yeah, I mean, like I love all of the scenes with the weasels, because similar to the one with the car, where it's like you're seeing this, you know, there's some of the best scenes where you get the animated stuff like really interacting with the real environment, because the car is doing some amazing things, like actually crashing through barriers, which again, if you see the behind the scenes stuff, like there's nothing crashing through those barriers. They're just like they had to create this thing where, you know, they basically just like rigged a barrier to explode off screen, but they had to time it with real people who were driving the cars around them, because there's actual stunt drivers and there's actual people walking through the streets. It's a real set. So, but then they were just like, and here's the explosion timed, and all the people have to react to it, which is going to be eventually the car crashing through or doing whatever he's doing. And the weasels get a lot of that stuff too. I love that slapstick suspense sequence when the weasels first arrive at Eddie's place, and obviously they have that great gag throughout the whole movie where they start laughing, and when they start laughing they basically just like become useless because they just fucking love gags, and you can always trust a cartoon to just fucking think something's hilarious. But that whole sequence when Roger is he handcuffs himself to Eddie, being like, oh my god, Eddie, you gotta help me out of this situation, because essentially, I'm assuming people have seen it, but like, there's a reason it's called Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Mr. Acme gets murdered, and Roger is obviously the number one suspect due to the circumstantial evidence that the last time they saw him, they were showing him photos of Acme playing patty cake with his wife, and him crying and freaking out, and doing everything that he's doing. And in the meantime, also, I think that's partially when we're introduced to Christopher Lloyd's Judge Doom as well, and his black cloak and giant fake chiclet looking teeth, and just sort of a cartoonishly oppressive vision of like a violent authority figure. And he's the one who has hired the gangster weasels to rein in the insanity of the Toons, but doing so really, really ruthlessly by putting them in this dip that is a mix of, I think it said, turpentine, acetone, and benzene. It's functionally just like acid that he brutally melts and kills Toons inside of, which is that detail where it almost looks like he has like blood on his glove after executing the little cartoon shoe. And I know at one point too, they even suggested that like they're meant to say they are just genociding the Toons, that they actually wanted to call it not the dip, the final solution at one point. And I think Disney actually told them that they couldn't do that. Because they were basically like, look, we want to make Christopher Lloyd like an actual Nazi. You have against Toons essentially. But going back to my point, the fucking weasels and the way that they are actually carrying the little handguns around and the Tommy guns around, which are being held on little wires while they're in his apartment, the way that they'll fling a chair and, Eddie is holding Roger in the sink, basically drowning him, being like, I got nothing here. I'm just doing my dirty laundry, all of that. And the way the weasels are actually threatening to him and holding a gun to his head. And it does help that gun feels real. You will believe it that Bob Hoskins, that a cartoon weasel is threatening to blow Bob Hoskins' brains out in front of you. And it's not just like, like that's something that would happen in this movie, you imagine.
Or the little splash for the sink water that he does.
The little details are
how did they do that, now that I think about it?
Because
the weasel actually does splash water at him. That's true.
They paid him. They paid that weasel to splash the water, and he did it.
And having the cartoons, like, that they're already predisposed to being violent and violence in general. So when he does point the gun at him, you're like, yeah, this guy's totally ready to blow him away. And then I like that, like, when we get to the Acme factory where Christopher Lloyd's introduced, at first they're just showing like a bunch of the kind of almost classic cartoon weapons that you'd see, like a hammer or a big axe, or like that missile,
the mallet with the boxing glove in it.
Stuff like that, exactly. And then when you're introduced to Lloyd and you get the dip, there's just something so much more visceral and real, especially the way he dips the shoe in there. Like, he does it incredibly slow, so you get like the shoe reacting to his body melting, and it's actually screaming, and it really is. And like you said, Josh, it has like the blood, it basically heavily implied blood at the end, just dripping from his hand. And like, I was watching it with a buddy, he just happened to come by for a little bit and watched a little bit of it, and it happened to be that scene, and he said out loud, he's like, why is he going so slowly? Like, because it just seems so much more extra torture just to do that. He could have just dipped it in, and it's not like that's any better. But like, it's really, he's trying to harm the Toon, and it's just and it wants to fuck with you. It wants to be like, hey, look at this beautiful Dumbo that we have on loan from Disney, just hanging out on set. Don't you love Dumbo? Now here's one of Dumbo's friends. Now here's him being
excruciatingly murdered right in front of you, you know, like,
and it's like the cutest design.
So perverse
thing too. They don't grab like one of the like more rough around the edges kind of cartoons that you've seen more violence done to or done themselves. Instead, they have like the cutest little shoe cartoon get it done to them. It's just so much more crude and mean.
I feel like it almost softens the moment in like in a helpful way, because it's so cute that the scene almost takes on this vibe of like, okay, well, that thing was clearly designed to die. You know, that thing was designed to elicit the most emotion. It doesn't feel like a real guy got killed. It's like, oh, okay, you know, it's the bunny in Cool World, to jump ahead, the bunny who gets ripped off in the dice game. It's almost like, well, the bunny is so cloyingly cute.
He was designed. That was his function, to be drawn, was to be fucked with or
die.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man. I mean, you definitely wouldn't feel as much, you know, I mean, maybe you would, but Baby Herman is, you know, not as cute when he's smoking his stogie and like saying like, hey, toots, like, check out my 3-year-old dinky, you know, or whatever it is that he's saying.
I actually think it would be way rougher. I think it would be way more disturbing to watch Maybe
because
Herman
it's an actual baby and not a shoe, so you would be watching like a baby just fucking melt away.
Hold him by his diaper, dropping him in.
Oh my God.
He's a guy, you know, he's like a character with dimensionality rather than just like a cute shoe that's like flirting with another shoe. Like I think it would be more fucked up
shoe
to kill
rights,
Baby Herman.
bro. Oh man. Yeah. That shoe did not deserve to die.
No. Oh. No, all he wanted to do was snuggle. He wanted to make people laugh, you know, but you know,
wanted to be worn around the world.
Instead, there is a conspiracy to murder Toons, and you know, something to do with Acme. You know, he was the true owner of Toontown, and you know, if he were to die, his will would be to leave it to all of the Toons. But clearly, someone wants to subvert that in some capacity. Could it be the most evil man you've ever seen on screen?
Right away. He's sinister the moment you look at him too. It's kind of wild, that character introduction.
Yeah, because as we've been, you know, saying, like, Bob Hoskins has a little bit of a thorny relationship with Toons, but even he goes immediately like, dude, this guy is like incredibly
what the
evil
hell?
And like to a racist degree against Toons, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it becomes a little bit more sort of like slapstick action heavy as Roger Rabbit and Bob Hoskins' Eddie are, you know, kind of aligned with one another in this conspiracy, because they start going like, look, clearly someone is trying to frame Roger for it. Clearly someone paid me to be involved in taking those photos and doing that, and Jessica Rabbit also, you know, was partially involved in this. So like clearly, you know, something is afoot. But I do like also that the movie, you know, does take its time to just like indulge in like a joke scene. One of my favorite scenes is just Bob Hoskins, his hairy shirtless scene of him just hanging out with Jessica Rabbit, looking like a sexy like Danny DeVito. You know, like it's just a, you know, just little stuff like that, or
and
taking
he's, like,
the time
his
to do
head off her boobs and stuff. Like it's
yeah,
because she's like 7 feet tall and he's like 4'5". It's awesome.
or taking the time to do like the great character gags, like after the scene with the weasels when Roger Rabbit had handcuffed to him, and created an entire sequence where, you know, like they were quite literally handcuffed in the situation. Like they were like, oh my God, we have so few escape routes from these weasels because we have this physical, you know, sort of limitation. And when finally Bob Hoskins gets out of there and he's sawing the handcuffs off, and literally Roger Rabbit just like slips his hand out because he's a fucking animated character. He could just make his arms skinny and all of a sudden he's out. And just Bob Hoskins gets one of the best like lines and reaction shots you could possibly get, which is, you know, being like, you could have taken your hands out of those cuffs at any time through that whole set piece where we were stressed we were going to die. And he's just like, you know, not at any time. Only when it was funny, you know.
That's my favorite line in the whole thing, because it gives them almost like their, not only his philosophy on life, but their rules,
exactly.
like their physical rules that they have to go by. It's like I couldn't actually get out of there because I couldn't find a comedic exit, and I need that. I just love the commitment to the bit.
And he would like die for it. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. He's truly committed to the bit.
Well, yeah, the way that they show that like the slapstick nature of it all is something that is like actually like natural to them and like ingrained in who they are as people, something they're skilled at, something that is baked into their personalities. And he always wants to laugh.
Roger has like a fun song where he starts like smashing plates over his head and stuff,
so good.
And he's like, no pain, no pain, no pain, but he just
and the best thing is it's because the record is scratching and skipping, right? So it keeps repeating on the beat, and he's like, well, I'm committed. Yeah, he's like, I'm committed to this bar song. This is the beat. This is the cue. So he keeps breaking the plate over and over again because he can't possibly break the cue, even though the plate is obviously having an effect on him. Like he's just doing a stunt, essentially. He's doing a Jackie Chan stunt or something like that. And you know, he's just a showman. You know, it's just who he is.
A lot of it is Charles Fleischer's performance too. He's so like vulnerable and sincere when he tells Eddie like, I could only do it when it was funny. And it like that makes it even funnier, but it also it's like sort of makes you love Roger a little. It's like, oh, this guy means it, you know? This guy's not like, this isn't an act. He'll die if it comes to it.
And the way he acts with his voice, there's a lot of whining. There's almost like there's a desperation to want to be so funny too. That I kind of really like from Roger. He is what you would get out of like a classic leading cartoon character, but there's so much pain that he seems to be just holding back. And so some of the like crazy chaotic comedy that comes out seems like more, I don't know, impulsive than say somebody like Bugs Bunny, who always seems to have a plan, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's even a part where Judge Doom even uses that nature against him too at one point, which is very funny when he's like, I know that he's in here somewhere, and he's knocking on the bar wall, and he's doing like the shave and a haircut rhythm or whatever, and he's just like he's literally like, Roger Rabbit is like his insides are twisting as he's like, oh my god, I have to complete this routine. He's making the call, you know, I have to burst through and sing the song, you know. Even though it's going to reveal where they're hiding in the wall and everything like that, which starts the eventual car set piece that they do, which also I gotta say, one of my favorite gags in the car set piece is when which obviously there's some amazing stunt work too, where like the weasels are chasing them on the bikes, and they're crashing into cop cars, and the cops are like flying hundreds of feet in the air and everything like that. But there's a part where they smash the button or the lever, where it's like, this fucking lever, idiot, as it pops out, and he pulls it down, and the wheels shoot up, and the car goes over top of the cop car. But then they're about to hit a bridge, and I love that the car Benny, which is also voiced by Charles Fleischer, by the way, he's a really talented guy. That line that he gets was like, what do you call the middle of a song? And I don't even know if they actually say it in the dialogue or not, but that is shot with a POV shot of them crashing into the fucking bridge. So the gag is completed by the actual physical shot, which is incredible.
Yeah, another great one, and it's a full-on reference, I think, to a Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck sketch, which is the open season one, the one where is it Elmer Fudd? He's hunting down Bugs Bunny, and it's Elmer Fudd and it's Bugs Bunny and I think Daffy Duck, and they have that whole, it's the reverse psychology gag where he's just like, it's rabbit season, it's duck season, it's rabbit season, it's duck season, and then they switch on him so Daffy Duck gets shot, and they do that exact gag in this when he's trying to make Roger Rabbit take a shot of alcohol, and he's just like, he says something like
you do want to drink.
Yeah, you do want to drink. I don't want to drink. You do, you don't. And then he drinks it or something. I just love that was a direct reference.
Yeah, because he does it enough times that he switches until he convinces him to do otherwise.
Right. And that's, I can't even remember what year that was from, but I think it's the 40s, which is the open season sketch from the Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. So it was just cool to see that exact reference, but done with alcohol this time.
It actually comes after the timeline of this movie, which means Eddie invented that and Bugs Bunny ripped him off.
Really? I thought it was an older cartoon. I didn't realize.
No, it is. I think Branson's just saying that it didn't exist at the time that Eddie did it in the film. Like it came out.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
I think the short is from like 51 or something.
Yeah, no, there's honestly there's so many gags like per minute in this. You can't even like catalog all of them. Like it's ridiculous, while also maintaining like a little bit of the the noirish intrigue of the mystery, and doing a little bit of the the sad backstory stuff, like when they go to the theater, and Bob Hoskins actually tells Roger like why it is that he is sort of bitter towards Toons, that he had a piano dropped on him from 15 stories, and he had red eyes and a squeaky voice, and it was horrible. And I love that Roger's just trying to like enjoy the cartoons at the theater. He's just like, man, because that's Goofy's appearance. Goofy isn't playing in the theater, and he's like, man, I love Goofy. Goofy's like a genius. You could tell that he like reveres him as like a fellow just like actor and creator essentially. And I love that bit too, when he's like, well, what's coming on next? I hope it's another cartoon. And then it's like a newsreel, and he's like, oh man, fucking newsreel to deliver some exposition about the Cloverleaf conglomerate that might be involved in all this greed, sex, and murder in Toontown.
The plot, exactly.
Boo. That was the most relatable joke to me as a kid, too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I just love that it maintains this balance of wackiness and darkness throughout. Like just the Bob Hoskins interrogating the head of Roger's cartoon studio, revealing that I was just trying to blackmail Acme, I wasn't trying to kill him or anything like that. And before he can get anything else out, like a giant silver pistol just actually blasts him away. And there actually is like there's not the blood squib, but there is the actual like tearing of his suit and everything as the impact hits, and he's getting killed, and almost kills Eddie as well. And again, Hoskins has to do like a fucking crazy role that he does in that scene too. It's a very sweaty physical performance, and really committed performance, considering all that he's hanging out with a bunch of cartoons.
There's even like a couple moments with I think it's with the cartoon studio CEO. They have some decent lines when they sneak into the studio, and he's like, you need a heart before you can have a heart attack. But one of my favorite lines is, I'm a cartoon maker, not a murderer. And he's like, everyone's got a hobby. That's a great line. But then they even do have some kind of more like gangster imagery where they put his tie into that machine and start rolling it up.
It's like a violent interrogation sequence straight out of just like a noir.
Yeah.
It felt like that reminded me of like Kiss Me Deadly or something. It's just like the most fucked up thing I could do to a guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then it leads to a set piece where obviously Eddie at some point has to go into Toontown because Jessica Rabbit has kidnapped Roger at one point, despite saying that she was only hired to take compromising photos with Acme. He's not sure. That's when I think he gets the Yosemite Sam 6-shooter with all the sentient Western bullets, which are pretty funny.
Yeah,
and, he's chasing her into Toontown, and Hoskins does get to do a whole sequence in basically like the full animated world with some some pretty great like physical gags where he has to learn the logic and physics of that world. They even do steal the Red Hot Riding Hood bit, not just the one where the wolf is whistling and hooting at the sexy lady, which is what most people remember, but that whole bit when he chases little Red Riding Hood home and instead gets sexy Granny, who's dressed up and actually wants to have sex with the wolf, and he's like, oh no. And they actually do a whole repeated set piece of that in this, where he's trying to chase down sexy Jessica Rabbit, and instead it's like it's this old woman who's chasing after him. And they also do a little bit of that gravity bit when he opens the door, and they're it's all the it's a nonsense door that's at the top of a skyscraper, and he just seeing Bob Hoskins get to do a moment that like Wile E. Coyote would be doing, where he's like, I've ran off a cliff and now I'm in the air for hanging here pondering my mistakes before Tweety Bird comes and fucks me up.
One of my favorites
like the little
is
things of he'll fall out of frame and his hat is still spinning, and then impossibly his hand reaches back up into the frame to grab the hat, is like, he's in Toontown. It's like he can't stretch his body, but he can still like break reality in certain ways because that's the rules of Toontown. And Bob Hoskins sells it so perfectly of like, this is not fun for me. Like, I hate that this is happening.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really cool, too, to see him be affected by some of the more animated physics, like when he's in the elevator with the dog, who is honestly, I can't remember what his name is. The elevator
Droopy.
host.
That's Droopy, right?
Oh, that's Droopy, right?
Yeah.
And
you can tell by the way he speaks, like he's droopy.
Have a good day, sir. It's so funny, and just calling him sir at the end of every single mishaps is just absolutely hilarious. And I love that
floor, sir.
Yeah, and you get to see Hoskins like shrink into like a what's that instrument that's kind of like a accordion or whatever.
The accordion,
yeah. He's kind of flattened, and then he goes back into the ceiling when it goes up, and like just tossed out of the elevator. It was just awesome to see Hoskins have to go through that as well. Once he starts to, he even at one point takes the revolver because he's trying to battle the cartoons, so he has to use one of their weapons and like send 7 of those Western styled bullets into the tunnel and everything.
And they all get lost because they can't see. They're like they're so old. Yeah. They're like, where did he go? He went that way.
Yeah, it's great. I love
an
the
old
sequence.
Pat Buttram doing one of the bullets too.
That's cool.
That's cool.
Brought out everyone for this.
Yeah, no, there's some hilarious, just like, seeing Bob Hoskins have to deal with the animated use world physics and everything like that. The when he's walking along the shadowy alleyway, like he's in a noir, and then he sneezes and his shadow says "Gesundheit."
Yeah.
Or there's like and this is obviously where the Bugs and Mickey part is that we were saying is not necessarily the best use of Bugs and Mickey. You would think that they would have a little bit heavier hitting of a scene like that funeral scene. I do like the bit when they're like, you don't have a parachute, man, and they're like, we have a spare, and they hand him a spare tire. That feels like something fucked up that those assholes would do.
Yeah. I do like we got an Arnaya stinker.
People forget, but Mickey's bizarre. A fucking asshole.
Yeah,
maybe more than Bugs Bunny. That whole short where he's just torturing animals. Is that the Steamboat Willie one where he's just
Steamboat
literally
Willie, he's a monster.
He's literally just terrorizing everything that comes into the frame in Steamboat Willie. Like Mickey Mouse is a freak and a pervert. The first half and I would have actually liked to seen a little bit more of that from him in this.
The first half of Mickey Mouse's career is like Old Testament God, and then he like he rebrands somewhere in the middle there and becomes like, oh, I just love Minnie and I love my friends. Like it's kind of like that. It's very I don't know where the turn happened, but he was a vicious motherfucker. He
carries a gun and like stabs people early on, and then later on he's like, oh, we gotta open the parks, and like puts all that away.
Yeah, man.
But in this movie, he's more disturbing than Bugs, because Bugs you expect like murder. Like Bugs is not above like killing a guy for sort of no reason. Like that's fine. But when Mickey just laughs, that's like way more fucked up.
That is, there's like more ominous energy to that for sure. Like he didn't have to do anything. He's so in charge. He's king. He's Mickey Mouse that he just watches them get tortured and laughs at it. He's just like, this is all entertainment for me. I'm Mickey Mouse.
It's a lot more horrifying than Roger's natural predilection towards just like entertaining people and making people happy and making them laugh,
Right, exactly.
Seems more sweet.
Exactly.
I even like that Jessica Rabbit says that at one point, because Bob Hoskins is like, like, what do you even see in this guy? Like, you're the sexiest cartoon anyone has ever drawn in the history of cartoons. He's an annoying rabbit. And she's just like, he makes me laugh. Yeah. Like, it's adorable.
And it's bolstered by Betty Boop's line, too. Betty Boop goes like, you get a lot of world building when he's like, that's the dame that's married to Roger Rabbit. And she goes, yeah, lucky girl. And it's like, oh, yeah, a toon would be more sexually attracted to comedy than anything else, right? Like that makes enough sense for the movie to function on,
Oh, totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he'd be king for sure.
Yeah, and it does make it a little bit more sad when you're like, oh no, they're going to drop Roger and Jessica into the dip, and they're going to acidically melt all of Toontown, because it is revealed that the entire plot, which is it's so funny how much it is just lifted from Chinatown. I don't know what kid they thought would think like Chinatown's fucking sick. I love that movie. You know, like this is such an inclusion just for adults that I just don't even understand what they were thinking. I mean, I watch it now, grown up, and I have seen Chinatown. The first time I watched this, I had not seen Chinatown. I was like, oh, I don't know. There's something about LA's public transit, you know, I don't know, whatever. I don't know what's LA, you know, but yeah, but now I watch it and I'm like, oh my God, they actually did fucking do that shit in the history of LA. And, you know, like, and it literally when Christopher Lloyd, who was meant in the script to be basically a Nazi, is declaring the vision of LA of like freeways and billboards and gas stations. You know, like he's literally just describing what LA would be in a couple of years. And it's like, as if it's like this amazing, you know, not hellscape, but you know it will be because he's evil monologuing about it and everything like that. But just to include that as like the ultimate political conspiracy of all of this, that he is genociding cartoons over Los Angeles real estate to create, you know, endless highways that nobody likes. Everyone wishes that LA had a functional public transit, you know, like the one where Bob Hoskins and all the poor delinquent kids just like sneak on the back of it and are like, you know, why even pay for this shit? You know, like we don't need to, you know, who would drive a car? Who would sit in a car and look at billboards for 5 hours when you could just have the best LA transit that, you know, I think at one point they literally say LA has like the best transit in the entire world, which is, you know,
it gets a huge laugh when you watch it.
Yeah. A joke even in 1988 that was funny, but is probably like even funnier now. And yeah, like that had like if that played at a rep screening in LA, which I'm assuming where you watched it, Branson, that has to be like a knock down the house kind of joke line.
Or they get so mad they just
are throwing their bras at the screen. It's funny. Yeah, they love that shit. It's also like, it's interesting that like, because you know, like Toontown is sort of like a stand-in here for the neighborhoods in the Chavez Ravine that were like demolished to build Dodger Stadium. Like there is like there's a lot of real world stuff that's very sad and a huge bummer. And there is this sort of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sort of like revisionism happening in this movie that makes it like, there's this very like melancholy undercurrent to the movie of like, of course, none of this actually happened and Judge Doom actually got his way and people actually died. Like it's very sad.
Yeah, but they were like, what if Bob Hoskins was there and he did a little vaudeville dance that made a bunch of weasels literally laugh themselves to death, and then they sprayed Christopher Lloyd's Nazi with acid dip and he just like exploded. You know?
Oh yeah.
What if that was what the history of LA actually was that we wrote about?
I love the transition with Lloyd as well, where he, like at first they have again kind of a very because you know without the reveal you don't necessarily know that he's a toon, and he starts to get rolled over by the giant cement roller, and
oh my God,
it's kind of crazy because at first you're just like, this is happening like to a man on screen in this PG-13 film. This is fucking wild. And like the only thing that's missing is blood.
Because his feet have been like super glued to the floor while the steamroller's going over him. And my God, the dummy work, watching that dummy actually get crushed and then still like move and try to talk as like a flattened pancake. What an incredible effect.
Yeah, the effects are awesome. And then it turns really creepy too, because like Christopher Lloyd already had this very unblinking giant-eyed stare, but then they put his actual body in with these big cartoon red eyes that are like 2 times the size of his normal eyes, and it's just so unsettling. It is still very, you know, it's a cartoon, so there's kind of like a wackiness to it, a little bit of a comedy to it, but just the size of them and the stare that never ends is honestly unsettling. So that big reveal was cool, and I did like the inflating himself, where that's a classic cartoon thing, but you get to see it actually done physically because he still has the physical body of a human but the cartoon eyes. So it's cool.
well because that's what happens when he blows himself up like a balloon. It actually pops his eyeballs out, which is why you actually they actually reference it earlier too, when the box full of Acme eyeballs just falls out during the scene where we're first introduced to him, and he's literally like slipping and sliding on the various eyeballs throughout the scene. He just accidentally keeps tripping over them and stuff. So they actually set that up too.
That first scene at the warehouse is the movie just being like, watch this space. Like we are setting the climax up.
We're coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Now, but you don't expect to see Bob Hoskins like on a pogo stick and like doing pratfalls and like juggling
Banana
and all the shit
slipping.
that he's doing while Roger and Jessica Rabbit are being like threatened with the acid nozzle as if it's like a laser in a Bond movie where they're just like tied up and it's slowly getting closer to them. Like it's such a ridiculous climax.
I do love their sweet little line that she tells him where she's like, "You are magnificent. Better than Goofy." That's just great. That's awesome.
Because Goofy's his favorite. She knows, and it's so romantic.
I love it.
And also, I love that there's the subtlest implication that she might have slept with Goofy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Goofy's got it going on, but not like Roger.
Yeah. I mean, Goofy's a star. That's what we learned from all of it. And also Goofy's been cleared of charges, more importantly, That's right. He's not a spy for the communists, and maybe he's got that D. We don't know.
It does feel like a movie where like Goofy would be credited as like Goofy, like in parentheses, archival footage, It's like Goofy as himself.
Yeah, no, it's a great climax. I grew up watching this film, so I've always with this film I've always just found more and more detail to it that I never picked up on. This was my first time picking up on that the singing Sinatra sword is meant to be from the Prince Valiant comic stuff.
Oh yeah,
because that was something I just had no idea about before watching this, and it's always just been like, I don't know, it's a funny sword, it's a good gag, But again, they've thought through so many of the details of this. It's amazing.
It really is so, because it's so funny, like
the Wizard of Oz melting scream that fucking Christopher Lloyd does too, like the witch. Yeah. It's great. Like there's so much movie history like in this one film.
It really is just like full of like a love of film.
And I like that they also still pull off kind of a adult joke at the end of it too, with Jessica saying, "Let's go home and I'll make you a carrot cake." I'm like, holy shit. That's a wild line. I never realized when I was younger. But yeah, it's just so much fun. It really is a very, very fun movie. And yeah, the deep historical references to animation and Hollywood is just, and noir it's very cool. There's really nothing like it.
Something that's interesting about this movie, before we get off of it, is the surviving 9 old men who are Disney's like key animation team, who are all retired. They were all retired by this point. The last 9 old men. The last member of the 9 old men, I think, retired. Their last movie was Great Mouse Detective, which would have been a few years before this. Frank Thomas, who is the Frank of Frank and Ollie, who's like a beloved old man. He's just like everyone's like sweet-natured grandpa. He saw this movie and he didn't like it. And there's an anecdote that Richard Williams shares in the Animator Survival Kit of talking to Frank Thomas after this movie. And he was like, because he revered these guys. He looked up to them and saying like, "Frank, what did you think?" And sort of, like the very human thing of like sort of looking for a compliment from him. And Frank just sort of like he's a sweet guy, just looking for something positive to say and being like, the kids I saw it with seemed to really like it. And Richard Williams just crushed.
Oh man. No. He was like, maybe he didn't like that, Pinocchio only shows up for the last scene or something, like he could have used some of my guys a little bit more,
I think his point was that Roger was not animated relatably enough. I think it was like that he was going for, I might be incorrectly paraphrasing a dead man, so I'm sorry, but I think it was that Roger, they went so hard on so many gags with Roger that he, as an animator, was like, I sort of lost his character. It's a very inside baseball complaint.
Yeah,
they were like, he wasn't on model enough, man. This character that you just like.
Yeah, it's like wasn't a discernible enough animated character. I mean, I could kind of see that, but I also think that it's like Roger's whole persona or personality was like trying to encompass the greatest of them all and be like the best animated character in a sense. Like that's what he's striving to be. Better than Goofy,
he's meant to be a love letter, right?
Yeah. So
I mean, the movie does. It's Babe Ruth pointing at the outfield, pointing beyond the outfield, being like, when it says better than Goofy. good. I mean, that is one of the all-time animated characters. You know, like Benedict Cumberbatch. That's a called shot.
That is, yeah, that's
true.
That's tough to pull off for sure.
Yeah, but they saved the day. You know, Toontown is no longer going to be threatened by corrupt LA developers. The Acme's will was written in disappearing ink, which is a funny gag. Bob Hoskins kisses Roger, and that's all, folks. You know, that's it. They did it.
Porky
even
the Pig,
even though as we know, Doom
line.
did eventually win the battle for Los Angeles, and he did beat the Toons ultimately with his vision.
But that's why we watch movies.
Yep. Yeah, forget it, Jake. It's Toontown kind of deal, you know. Like that's what they went for. But
remember,
Jake,
if we won.
Yeah. If we're pivoting towards the reductive rating round, this one's a 5 for me. This one's been a 5 since I was like a kid, but I will say it's not just because I grew up with it, because there's a lot of stuff I watch now that I was like, oh man, that was not as good as I remember. That did not hold up. But this is just one that, like, again, the entire concept of the toon noir thing, merging the 1940s golden age of animation, merging it so well with the the world of film noir and noir pastiches, like things like Chinatown, and doing that on one level so technically amazing, like actually pulling it off. It's gorgeous. It's interactive. The environment, it's so totally thrilling to watch. These guys clearly love and are, they love the things that are great about animation and great about noir. You're getting the best of both worlds, while also, they're totally involved in the history of both of them. They've clearly watched all of them. They have so many, lovingly detailed references. They're even taking in some of the thornier elements and actually, including some genuinely horny and violent. Because I mean, that's it. You can't make this movie because noir is one of the horniest genres of any genre of American film.
Oh yeah.
So like that has to be in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's incredibly violent. So like those aspects make their way in. Some of the dark social political commentary stuff that's baked into the sort of capitalist racist history of both film and animation, including all of that stuff. And just again doing like a perfect recreation, but also trying to take it beyond, animating on ones, creating an amalgamation of these characters, doing things that aren't the exact same as watching a Tex Avery or Dave Fleischer short, but capturing the spirit of doing that and merging it with these incredible live action elements, and the amount of just painstaking effort that goes into this film, and while also feeling so light and on its feet and feeling like it's it wants to hang out and just goof off, but you watch it like when you're an adult and you're like, oh my god, the lighting, the motion control, the prop puppets, how they would have had to animate over top of all of the elements they had to cover up because they wanted to just show a weasel holding a gun, and instead of just being like, what if it's a cartoon gun, they were like, no, what if a giant puppet man holding a clear wire held a gun, and we actually had to stage the gun's interactions in the scene with Bob Hoskins, and then put the cartoon holding it after the fact. Like it's
just so you can have rules in the world that are established between cartoons and humans. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. Like you only put that level of effort if you are passionate about this genre history. You're passionate about the effect that it's actually going to have viscerally on the audience when they watch this stuff. So again, this whole movie is just watching Dean Cundey get to shoot one of the most beautifully stylized, like, child versions of Chinatown, which is an insane thing to even suggest exists, mixed with Chuck Jones doing, some freewheeling slapstick anarchy kind of stuff. And it's just, again, the way it breaks the barrier between those two things, the same way that the actual characters are breaking the barriers within the worlds. Like it's formally inventive, it's fast, it's totally joyous. And yeah, as I've gotten older, I've just totally fallen more in love with it, understanding more of its movie nerd references, more of the actual production history of film and animation. And yeah, it's also just like an incredibly weird and perverted thing to have made as much money and won as many Oscars as it did. Like it's a rare moment where people were kind of right, that everyone was astonished on a technical level by this thing, and it has the actual love and passion and film chops to actually back that up, that it's not just a gimmick movie.
Yeah, it's really cool too that something with like a little bit more perversion and this kind of comedy is what set off the whole like animated renaissance and everything, because nothing really. I mean, there's some movies from that I absolutely adore, like The Lion King, stuff like that. But this is just referencing noir and mixing that with Looney Tunes and doing it in a very cool and authentic way. Is just something I don't think we'll really ever be able to see again. Like they've tried to do these mashups since then, but they've always been they've usually been pretty ugly for one, and the whole use of these properties from studios, like these characters, these trademark characters, has just become incredibly cynical when they do it nowadays. Like one of the most recent ones I can think of is
I was going to say Space Jam 2. Is that what you're talking about?
Just fucking awful. Yeah. Just horrifying. Like really nightmare fuel kind of stuff. And just seeing something like this where it's like you can do that, but you can do it with like an actual respect to the genre, to the genres, to the history of the films. There's just so many great references to comedy, to animation, to noir. It's really obviously built by people that love it and understand it.
And love it so much that they would actually have to put the work in. The thing about doing something like this now is it's really easy to do in a computer. Like you can just do these things, where these guys were literally inventing a thing that no one believed could be done. And they literally invented the tech to be able to do it because they believed in it so much. And they were like, no, we're going to do these amazing analog practical effects. We are going to, do hand-drawn animation over top of it and 24 frames of animation for every animated thing, which is that much harder. There was like 82,000 cells on this movie. Like it's so fucking just, I can't even imagine the amount of work. And I mean, the budget ballooned on this as a result. Disney wanted to make a $30 million movie. And it was like a $50 or $60 million movie eventually because of just the amount of effort and work it took.
Yeah. It's insane that's how cheap it was. It should have been like a $400 million movie just for like,
they saved money on Bob Hoskins. Okay. This would star someone else that would require more money now.
Whereas, for peanuts.
And nowadays it probably would, like, I think I read actually that they were talking about a sequel, but then a lot of it just ended up getting canceled because it was going to be like upwards to $100 million to make it and stuff like that. At least the way that they wanted to. And I'm sure the stars they wanted to include and all that. So I don't know, but at least we have this. So that's great. I'm glad that we have.
I gotta be honest. I've seen the kind of shit they're making that isn't that, I've seen the Space Jam 2s that they make. And Space Jam 2 is just like White Zombie, but they don't realize they're making a horror movie. It's just like the tunes can't die. Isn't that cool and not horrifying? I think what a blessing that they never made a sequel to this. It would have sucked ass.
I think so too. I think it's nice that we have that wrap up. The finale is a finale. It's a great film. I still think, I'm not sure if I'm at the 5 yet, but I am going to give it the old trademark Jamie 4 and come back to it later on. This is probably maybe the third time I've watched it. This was weird because when I was a kid, I always heard about it, and I saw the one scene where the shoe gets dipped into the dip, and and so that's the only thing that like really stuck with me this whole time. Who Framed Roger Rabbit was, and I just remember thinking like for knowing that it was animated, kind of a kids movie. That just always stuck with me. So when I got back around to watching it, and now over the years rewatching it and seeing all the references to noir, which I'm now more familiar with because of the show, so it's just grown on me more and more and more. So I just think I probably need another watch or something like that. But it's fantastic. So highly recommend if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, for you, Branson.
It's a shame we have to limit it at 5. This is one of my all-time favorites. 10. I give it 10 stars. I'll give it 6 so that it gets an average of we've each given it 5.
There you go. Yeah. No, it's very, very incredible. Oh yeah, one last note. Somehow I forgot to, speaking to all of the noir history, somehow we didn't mention that Jessica Rabbit is voiced by an uncredited Kathleen Turner.
Oh yeah, she was going body heat mode for sure.
Yeah,
I was going to say that, and I totally forgot. I don't know how.
Well, and I was like, yeah, and I wanted to bring that up because Lawrence Kasdan obviously has the George Lucas relationship. He directed Body Heat, and in Body Heat, he was functionally having her play Barbara Stanwyck from Billy Wilder's Double Indemnity, right? So like basically Jessica Rabbit was a mix of all of those actresses that we said in terms of design, and they literally found an actress who could do the Barbara Stanwyck Double Indemnity thing, and they were like, there you go. That's Jessica Rabbit now.
Yeah, that's killer. Yeah, Turner kicks ass in this. Like her voice work is so good, so good.
Yeah. So there you go. That's how an amazing children's genre object was infected by the weirdly perverted and violent history of the genres that it's referencing. It's just it's incredible.
But by the way, kids can handle this. I watched this when I was like 2 or 3. I was fine. Kids can handle it. It's fine.
If anything, like,
it's just pretty colors and a cartoon rabbit like slaps a dude. Like that's all you're paying attention to.
There's no implications of genocide or anything like that.
Funny penguins carrying fucking dishes around.
But it is like I would easily show this to my kids. I think the stuff with a little bit more of that like visceral feeling, I think, is kind of important to show them every once in a while at the very least. Not everything can be Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but definitely introduce them to it.
Hell yeah. Well, that'll wrap it up for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. We are going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about Cool World. Stick around.
I gotta take you back.
I just want to be real.
You gotta slow down.
Not on your life, pal.
Not fatty, you kidding. This place should be erased.
Hey, it's a living.
Cool World.
We may not be real to you as yet, but we will be.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Cool World, the 1992 American half live-action animation comedy, I guess still kind of a noir, directed by Ralph Bakshi, written by Mark Victor and Michael Grace, and starring Brad Pitt, Kim Basinger, and Gabriel Byrne, which is a really bizarre cast. And we'll
definitely
of people who have all given performances I've liked.
Oh yeah.
So and I mean Gabriel Byrne specifically, we worshipped at his altar during our discussion on Miller's Crossing.
Yeah,
just what an incredible movie, what an incredible performance, and
obviously Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt, so pretty prolific there.
To be honest, I think all 3 of them are good in this in theory. You know what I mean?
I love that additional in theory thrown in there.
In theory, I think what they did in front of the camera is potentially very good. It's just a matter of whether we were ever let in on that.
There are some with all of them. There's some specifics that are kind of like I think what they might be trying to go for, but it's in another film, or at least in another, or it just hasn't been presented in a way that's completely clear. So even when I'm saying like I'm seeing things, I'm not totally sure if I'm just making them up. But I with like Basinger, for instance, when she eventually becomes like real and stuff, she's making some strange choices. But I suppose we can get to all that. I suppose we should do a little bit of an introduction here, but
I was like, we should talk about Bakshi. Bakshi is the brain that this was born from. This is basically like, it is just quite literally Bakshi's Roger Rabbit. Like, part of the reason for this pairing is that the technical achievement of Roger Rabbit was so profound and like immediately clear to anyone who knew anything about animation, like Bakshi did, and who basically alongside Roger Rabbit being as big as it was, and I guess seeing a little bit of a revival of his career due to a Terry Toons reboot of Mighty Mouse. Is that what he worked on?
Yeah,
that was
I believe so.
In the late 80s, that had a bit of a revival. So his career was kind of coming. Yeah, but basically he hadn't made a movie in like 10 years. He was functionally like retired, and prior to that, obviously, he's a very crude, for some people very offensive, psychedelic kind of like adult exploitation animator. And for anyone who really wants the backstory, we did a lot of it last week, but the short version of that was we talked about Fritz the Cat, which was his very intentionally, deliberately vulgar, very sexually and very violent X-rated cartoon that somehow like grossed more money than The Flash. For just a comparison point.
I love that was a comparison. That got me.
Yeah, and we credited, and we didn't love Fritz the Cat, but we did talk about it as like a really important historical object in terms of non-studio independent animation, and honestly kind of independent film a little bit, exploitation film a little bit as well. But Bakshi also had the sensibility to him where he was like, he kind of reveled in being shocking. He was the whole point of Fritz the Cat is he's breaking formal taboos, and he's also breaking genre taboos, and he's doing it very gleefully, and he does it with a sense of experimentation, a little bit of imagination, and his work is really cheap. But there is something kind of charming to the crudeness of it, and
usually he has made, like we make a lot of the point in the last episode, a lot of the time when he's doing these crude things, he is kind of putting up a mirror and trying to show a reflection of like America and some of the really disgusting imagery. It's just that sometimes he also is a little too playful with it, which is what happens a lot of the time. But
yeah, because I mean, like on one level, it's like, he is trying to raise legitimate points about like white college students who might hijack a social or political issue for their own selfish desire or to pursue their own sexual pleasure or something like that. The issue is that, for every moment as striking and radical as the one we mentioned about like, Mickey Mouse cheering on a U.S. Air Force bomber plane napalming a poor black community, and or right after including like the jive talking black crows from Dumbo being shot down in the streets by a cop who is a literal pig, and like he puts imagery that is very clearly kind of progressively charged in a sense, but then he will also be like, what if I spend an entire sequence on like one of the most lazy, tired stereotypes you've ever seen, or just like 10 minutes on like a juvenile sexual fantasy that that he's jerking off to, that it's purely there for the sake of it, or so
I was gonna say, like, his heart is so clearly in the right place, and I do like it. I should also say, I feel like I'm gonna like slag on him a lot. I like him. I admire him in a lot.
Yeah, we do too.
Yeah, we do too.
But he just like, it's exactly what you said. It's like, I have never had less doubt. There's never, other than like Robert Crumb himself, like I've never been less like in the dark about what a dude likes to jerk off to. Like he foregrounds that so hard in a way that is like so unpleasant to know about. He's like an
and it's so funny how it rubs up against him as like a guy who clearly has like socioeconomic and political considerations on his mind. Like Wizards was the funniest one for us because like there's so much genuine like nuclear anxiety and sort of military propaganda and
Nazis.
Real anxieties about fascism and the Holocaust, and it's actually comes out in this like surreal gothic apocalyptic imagery, like the rotoscoped animation in that where he takes old war and battle movies and turns it into like this surreally expressionist sequence of these characters like really tearing each other apart, starting a literal Holocaust in like a Tolkien Hobbit universe or something, and like that. And
these fairies and these like dwarves and these very almost children like fantasy creatures reacting to an actual backed green screen of footage of World War II and the Nazis rising and all of that. Like it's fucking insane, honestly.
Yeah.
So like he'll do something so sharp and targeted like that, and then he'll be like, but also there's a wizard who likes to smoke cigars and like slap a hot fairy's ass who's wearing a thong. And he'll be like, I'm not sure this is as sharp. I feel like, he got a little distracted and his pencil kind of went a little bit of a different direction for a little bit.
It's kind of like that, which in a sense I kind of find charming. It's like he's one of those dudes that he's taking his story very seriously, and then he just he can only do it for like 30 minutes to an hour, and then he trails off, but he forgets to edit out the little sexual doodles that he was doing before he got back on track. Like that's just what it feels like a lot of the time. But
he just leaves them in, you know?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, well, you know what? This is honest. This is going in.
He could use like an editor or just some like a guiding hand, just being like, "Oh, Ralph, baby, that's nobody's business but you and your wife's," you know, just like.
Yeah, although with this one, I guess it seems like if anything, I kind of like it seems like he got a little bit neutered with this apparently.
Yeah.
It's this time I'm kind of saying probably the opposite of what I was saying in Fritz and Wizards, which is that I almost wanted to see more of his like just authentic vision, whatever that crazy shit would have been, you know. Not that there's a couple moments in here obviously that have very much the Bakshi charm. It's just that
it's a very charming movie in a lot of ways. There's a lot of moments too where it almost just knowing there's no way not to know like the production hell that this went through, and like
you can kind of see it in the edit and the movie at times.
Oh, he got neutered, and he just was getting screwed around by Paramount so hard. It's impossible not to feel for him on it, but like he throws a temper tantrum on screen numerous times when he just tells his animators like, yeah, just put whatever on the screen. Like the first scene with Holly and Brad Pitt where they're interacting at her apartment. I was showing it to my wife and she was like crying, laughing of like, why is this happening? Of just like cartoon characters will just come up onto the screen. Like a chef with an axe is just chasing a muscular woman around. No characters even look at it or acknowledge it.
There is an interesting thing that Bakshi does sometimes where he's doing something he's presenting you as something that's very dry and just like what they need to do for the plot to move forward. But then during that scene, he'll always cut away to like some type of nonsense, comical, cartoonish, you know, zaniness or whatever. And he kind of mixes the two together. And I think his brain is kind of going like, well, you need both. You need kind of the comedic aspect and that animated aspect of it. And then I can also move the plot forward at the same time. But just sometimes those two things don't connect all of the time. So it kind of almost seems random, like he just wanted to throw comedy in there.
And what I imagine happened here too is because part of the story is that, you know, he came up with a world and a character and some plots, and he wanted this idea of like, what if a cartoonist, because obviously he's like, what if Bakshi, you know, created a comic book while in prison that made him an underground star in, you know, to the underground comics type people, the people who were reading Robert Crumb and that kind of stuff. And then what if that guy had actual sex with the femme fatale doodle, who in the original version was named Debbie Dallas for Debbie Does Dallas, because it's literally referencing like pornography, and not Hollywood, which is actually, I will say, that's actually kind of I do like the name Hollywood theoretically, and I do like the fact that it led to them building a giant Hollywood promo cutout that was like the size of the Hollywood sign, and they spent tens of thousands of dollars putting this up and, you know, trying to really advertise it as the sexualized R-rated, like, come see the guy who made Fritz the Cat and look at this like sexy cartoon next to the Hollywood sign. And everyone just got, this is actually a perfect metaphor for the movie. Everyone just got really annoyed and upset about it. They were like, why is that up there? I don't like looking at it. It's freaking me out. My kids are looking at it. Like, you know, it didn't have the rapturous response I think that they wanted when they were like, Ralph Bakshi does Roger Rabbit, you know, the guy who is famous for all these amazing animations that, you know, people have, you know, a lot of them have been enjoyed by people, and you know, that all of a sudden it was like, you know, but that's just it, is that the idea of even pitching them after the fact of Roger Rabbit was the problem, is because Roger Rabbit, as we said, has a lot of subversive kind of adult elements to it, but it's really smartly included with the history of the actual old animation and the actual old film noirs. And there's a certain level of kind of like a line that they walked kind of perfectly. And Bakshi has just never been a guy who I would say delicacy and balance is the thing that he's known for.
No, grace is not his strong suit.
No, so he went into this being like, actually, I want to make the full R-rated version of it, and it had this whole story about how, like, you know, like there was going to be this, you know, relationship between the human and the cartoon, and it was going to give birth to like this, like, you know, sort of like mixed race child that was going to come and try to hunt down the cartoonist who abandoned him. There was like some father-son stuff to it, and he basically said that it was going to be like a crime horror film, and he compared it more to Frank Miller's Sin City, is what he said that he wanted to make. And it was supposed to be Brad Pitt and Drew Barrymore as the two characters, but the studio, as they were getting pages in and as they were entering pre-production, they were like, dude, what the fuck? You said that this could be like our Roger Rabbit. We want to make money. We want to get nominated for an Oscar. Like, what do you do? We want a PG rating. Like, what are you talking about?
The last animator got a Lifetime Achievement Award or something.
They were like, we want movie stars. We want fucking, you know, Brad Pitt. Who's heard of this motherfucker? Get Gabriel Byrne. You know, Kim Basinger.
Year they were like, oh, Brad Pitt, not a sure thing. Gabriel Byrne, though, that'll put some buzz.
Just an incredible time to think about, you know, that they were like, you know, these people would kill to have Brad Pitt in anything now, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's just it. Like, that's what results in such a messy movie.
Good luck finding a poster of Cool World that isn't Brad Pitt's face taking up 80% of the poster, and then like some cartoons in the corner. Like they don't want you thinking about the rest of the movie.
No,
like,
well, I mean, Bakshi wanted Brad Pitt so bad, despite the fact that he wasn't like a star yet, that he actually wrote the role. Like, they added this character. Like, this character wasn't in his original script. And when they made him recast Gabriel Byrne, he rewrote a whole new character just for Brad Pitt so he could still cast Brad Pitt. Like, that's how much Bakshi was all in. So maybe we should give Bakshi some credit. He saw the star magnetism early. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Maybe Brad Pitt should help a dude out and get another project made or something.
Yeah, would it kill him to throw something Bakshi's way? He does have like star power in this movie. He has this sort of like bizarre alien, like sexy cool to him, even as he says these bizarre, like, it's just like, it feels like when you're like a kid and you're like reading like the Bible or something. It's like, why is everyone yelling at each other? Like, why are you mad about this? Like when like Brad Pitt is like pushing Gabriel Byrne, like, get out of here, asshole. It's like, wait, no, hold on. You just explained the rules to him and he seems game. Like, why are you being a dick? Like, it's just, he's just like mad because it's a weird, dark world. Like, nobody's motivations make very much sense in this movie.
Well, that's just it. The two scripts did not merge, right? Because like you can tell that he came up with characterizations. He came up with a freaky guy who wants to fuck a cartoon. And he had a story in which that was going to actually get addressed in a dark way, where like his kid comes back to try to kill him, and like, you know, you could tell his plot was actually going to address the weird perverted aspect of this character that he wrote. And then the studio was like, well, no, he's going to go in a plot where he's going to become Superman and save the day, and you can just tell that was not like what Bakshi ever intended for that character. So it's just like nonsense when you actually watch the movie. Like, it's incomprehensible in terms of like, you know, the original inception of where these characters came from and the story and plot that they are actually asked to walk through. Like, it doesn't make any sense, and it creates this weird thing that's like, it's obviously too dark and weird and perverted for an actual child to get anything out of, but it's also not like funny or fun or silly enough to actually be fun to a child. And it's kind of stupid, and, you know, kind of has like that generic, you know, sort of adventure movie plot, you know, element where it all has to wrap up in like a third act that has like, again, like by the time Roger Rabbit's wrapping up and it's getting deeper into its like well thought out history and conspiracy and Chinatown references, this is just like a guy goes to get an object for some reason that does a thing and they have to stop them from doing that. And you're kind of like, it does, man, that's what all this was like, leading to.
If you've ever like babysat or had young siblings or something, or if you have kids, it's like, it is plotted the way some kids will play, where they're like, oh, and then, and then this, and it's just like, it just adds on to itself without ever like calling stuff back. And like at the very end, with spoiler, I get, like, it turns out if you die in Cool World, you become and you're annoyed, you become a doodle, you become a cartoon, which like, I don't think.
Sorry, explain your terminology. Noids and doodles. What are we talking about?
Sorry. So noids. Audiences of 1992 would have been so. There's like we're supposed to avoid but a noid is a human being, a live action actor, and a doodle is a cartoon.
See, this threw me off because I thought we were talking about the Domino's pizza guy. Noid, you know what I'm talking about?
Bakshi's mistake too. It's a weird. It has nothing to do with I guess humanoid. So I get never mind. He's right.
Yeah,
a little much.
It is very strange in that sense. And I would say like the three essentially they have like kind of three characters they really focus on, which is Kim Basinger as Hollywood, Brad Pitt as Frank, and Gabriel Byrne as Jack. And every time they go to each different section, and don't get me wrong, like sometimes Hollywood and Brad are interacting, and that is a lot of it, but there's times where they're focused on the individuals, and it all feels very disconnected when it is going back and forth between those things, and then when you finally get them together, it just seems like a kind of like a mess, and it's hard to really understand people's like motivations in certain ways. Like there's the simple motivation that is presented, like with Jack, he's very into Holly. With Brad Pitt's character, he's like an enforcer.
He's very against interracial relationships.
Yeah, which that's the weird subtext that I was talking about in the intro that they don't really seem to like tackle very much. And I don't think like Ralph is thinking, it's because by the end of this film, they kind of do say like they shouldn't mix. That seems to almost be the end of it in some strange way. Because there's a lot of
they were like Brad Pitt should become a toon so that it's like it's a normal relationship.
Together. Yeah. And I'm just like I understand that. I don't think
mix. It says if they do mix, the world will end.
Will explode. So, which is that's it, because you imagine that Bakshi, he thought that through in his original idea when he was like, it's going to create a half toon, half human baby, and it's going to be, and you could imagine him trying to address this in a kind of playful or a politically oriented way, but to turn that into like a generic kind of happy ending moment, it doesn't work. Something gets lost in translation between the two things.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that you don't. I never think. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. There's a thing you could say there pretty artfully of like, well, a toon isn't real life, and so to lust after like something that doesn't come from the same spring of life that we do, like that is against nature. Like there's an argument that could be made there artistically, interestingly, or even like playfully of like, yeah, it just doesn't work. But what this movie does is it sort of accidentally almost it grafts on like race stuff onto the toons and then makes an argument that I don't think Ralph Bakshi believes. If he does, he's a monster,
No, he definitely doesn't.
That's the thing. I was watching it, and as you're watching it, you're just thinking like, you see that it's very clear that can easily be read as the subtext. But I know, with Bakshi and what he's normally saying about things, and quite frankly, even the way that metaphor threads through the narrative, it really doesn't work on a full scale, or it's not very fleshed out, but it's just obviously there. So you can't really ignore it, even though it's what you think is not heavily implied by any means. It's just there.
No, it's just an accidental result of Bakshi's actual kind of like dark sensibility and like the Hollywood writers having to write a script with his characters.
Yeah.
Like those two things just interact in bizarre ways throughout the entire film. And is this some of the most live action that Bakshi has ever shot? Because I know that we've talked about his, like the guy's not unfamiliar with live action. Like he did this amazing rotoscoping across so many of his animated films. And even in Fritz the Cat, we talked about his use of like documentary style sound for realism and animation, and the way that he would take like documentary photographs and actually use them as, like a reference for the art that he would do. Like he was very interested in realism. The guy was interested in sort of like street level documentation. But like the opening prologue of this, I didn't realize going into this how much of this would actually take place in the real world, and how much of it would be like, oh yeah, that's just Brad Pitt as a World War II veteran, turned detective who in the opening scene is seen like getting into a motorcycle accident with his mom after returning back from the war, which is kind of a funny origin story.
It's so funny to be like, remember Roger Rabbit, how it opens with a delightful cartoon that like welcomes you into the world? Here, a veteran is going to kill his mom on a motorcycle accident.
And they actually do try to make it like a sad, harrowing thing where like he gets into a car crash with some drunk celebrators, and he does this like huge cartoon dive like off the bike, and he starts hearing sounds of the war due to PTSD, like
which is never brought up again, by the way.
No, and he's calling a medic for his mom and everything like that, and then just for no reason he's sucked into Bakshi World because a cartoon scientist was like trying to bridge the two worlds and accidentally teleported him in at the exact moment. And I think they were trying to do something with like, he escaped into a fantasy world because he couldn't handle the tragedy and loneliness of like real life or whatever. But again, they don't follow through on that. In the end, he just becomes a cartoon and ignores that whole thing. It's not like the movie was teaching him that he had to go back to cope with the real world or something like that. It's not the same as like when Hoskins actually does have to learn to open up his heart to tunes even after they have, sort of like hurt him in a way. And speaking of, breaking the barriers of the two worlds lovingly, again, that ends with Hoskins kissing a cartoon and as like a gag and and affection at the same time. And with this, it's just the actual breaking of the two worlds and the transgressiveness of it is just kind of, I don't know, it feels kind of weirdly pointless and random.
I totally agree. And even like the when you get into the cool world and it's supposed to be all animated, like you don't really get that.
Can we talk about that? It's called Cool World too, by the way, but Jamie, you can keep going. I just wanted to bring that up because we're going to have to say this over and over and over again. And it's just, it's not that cool.
It feels like they wanted to say Toon World, but that was probably trademarked or something. So they were like, Cool
that's
World.
Actually
that kind of sounds
that's
like
definitely
Toon.
why they call it Doodles too. Like they were
probably.
like, we can't they already called it cartoons and tunes and Roger Rabbit.
It feels very like they showed it to a test audience just full of people who like don't know how to close their mouths and were like, I'm confused. Where is this world? Is it cool?
No, you don't understand. It's cool.
Is it though? It seems lame.
And like when they go into
kind of some
cool
weird
world,
guys' perversions, it's not that cool.
And like, especially the way that Holly is designed, it's wild. But with the actual cool world itself and like the sets, there may be a couple moments where they do like the full animated thing with the humans, but it doesn't look nearly as good as like when Hoskins finally goes to Toontown in Roger Rabbit. And what they do in Cool World is instead of having like objects be animated and stuff, they're almost like cardboard cutouts that make it look as if he's kind of in this 3D cartoon world. I think that's what they're going for. But instead
they're almost trying to go for some like expressionist set building where it just kind of like looks sort of surreal and he kind of walks through it.
I loved that. I don't think it works, but I don't care. I loved that. So I thought that was so cool to look.
It's definitely the most effort that they put in, because for the rest of it, like they are not doing the same level of like, motion control or environments or lighting or props. Like again, like Spielberg and Lucas and Zemeckis, maybe not a fair comparison. Bakshi's working on a different budget level. He's a different kind of filmmaker. He's not at the forefront of inventing technology to make a big budget movie. He has to rely on something a little bit more crude. But even at this level, I did expect a little bit more effort from Bakshi. Like there are no shadows on Pitt when a cartoon character walks by him. There's when they interact like when they interact, it's like you can actually see Brad Pitt like clipping through the cartoon animation sometime, which is just something that you just don't have to do. You could just animate that so that doesn't happen. And it's bizarre.
You can also tell that Brad at certain points doesn't know how much to give off of a physical performance when he's interacting physically with the cartoons. Like there's multiple moments where he's physically interacting with Holly, and he's either like putting his arm around her, and he's massaging her, or he's or pushing her, even stuff like that. And most of the time, whatever kind of physical force that he gives off, it doesn't quite match the energy that the cartoon Holly gives. So it just creates this kind of uncanny valley a lot of the time.
No, he just kind of lets Brad Pitt like hang there. I feel bad for Brad Pitt watching it because you're just like
you feel like he's awkward on set, like, and he himself, Brad, can feel it as he's delivering certain lines. Like he's uncomfortable.
He's clearly hitting cues, and they're kind of telling him what the story is, and that and they're trying to point him a little bit in the right direction. But I don't know. It is so kind of cheaply and lazily done that it neuters the fact that it doesn't actually feel interactive or funny, which is like the key to the movie, is that he's interacting with these real things. Ebert in his review making the Roger Rabbit comparison, because I think he said that even in his review, he said he went to a screening where they literally introduced it as like, if you loved Roger Rabbit, like you're gonna love Cool World.
Okay,
and
if you love Roger Rabbit and you're stupid, you'll love Cool World.
and so Roger Ebert like literally like quoted that guy in his review and was like, yeah, unfortunately not. He was like, a human character in Cool World will throw an arm around the shoulders of a cartoon, and the mismatch will be so distracting. It's the only thing that you can look at on the screen.
Yeah,
that was what he said, and I definitely felt like very similarly, and it clearly Bakshi kind of did too. Just telling people like, yeah, just animate random shit without a script. Just go fun, do
my
this
favorite
or whatever. Like
is
clearly
the sketchy gorilla head wearing like a VR helmet that flies by at one point, and it just looks like doodles.
There's
from
some
a
weird
notebook.
detail to this.
Oh, that's something too. Like there's certain ones that kind of work, but they'll be having scenes where it's clear that it was just Brad Pitt and depending on who he's talking to or which version he's talking to, either Kim Basinger or Holly. They're talking, and randomly as they're talking, it seems like Bakshi was just kind of like throw in a couple random cartoon characters that just kind of circle them. They don't do anything. They don't say anything. They don't look at them or interact with them, but they're just kind of there as like, this isn't this world alive, like that kind of thing. There's just one too many things that feel like afterthoughts, I feel like, and not.
It does create this whole sense that the world is weightless, and like none of it really matters, and so you start tuning out, which is a bummer because it's not like the story is that compelling, but like and to take nothing from Bob Hoskins, he does a great job. He does an incredible job in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but he is supported by the movie. When his eye line is off, they move the rabbit so that he's looking at him. When Brad Pitt's eye line is off, the movie is like, yeah, you're shit out of luck, dude. And he's just like,
it's true.
Yeah, you do feel bad for Brad Pitt like watching this, because he really is just left to sit there and because Hoskins was committed and he was doing that shit. He was doing stunts with cartoons. Like he was doing some pretty crazy shit. But again, we said that he was like the world's greatest straight man to the ridiculousness of everything that was around him, kind of grounding it, and that was the relationship. But Brad Pitt is just like left to deliver flat dialogue scenes, like all the ones he gets with Lynette, the sexy doodle girl he likes, but contains himself to only having a platonic relationship because that's the rules of Cool World, which isn't very cool of Cool World, I will say. He's just not immersed in it at all. He's blankly hitting cues. This
is like one of the most lifeless performances that I've seen from him. I mean, he tries here and there where he's got kind of this pseudo noir accent that he tries to do, and it's interesting to watch Brad Pitt do that. But for the most part, he's pretty dull in this, unfortunately.
Well, and he just has no energy or momentum to push him by the filmmaking either, Like you would feel like on some level, like the excited glee of Zemeckis really took over so much of that film. Bakshi does feel like, and you can tell, he was probably frustrated by the time he was shooting this stuff, being like, this isn't what I wanted to shoot. So, whatever. So I'm gonna half-ass it a little bit. And unfortunately, it's just, you can feel that.
Yeah.
I got to say, I do not blame Bakshi for getting frustrated. Like, this seems like this must have been a very painful process for him. Like, fair's fair, but come on. Like, put on your game face for the actors just a little bit. It's like, what is Brad Pitt supposed to do with lines? Like, where at one point he's explaining, he's like, I'm a cop. I enforce the rules of Cool World. There's only one rule of Cool World. Don't have sex with a tune. I've never had to enforce that law.
A doodle.
So what's your job?
A doodle.
Yeah.
But it's like you've been here for 50 years.
Trademark tune. Come on, man.
Sorry.
But it's true. So like, what's your job? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? You just walk around and hope that you don't see any two beings having sex. Like I just like, that's the only, it does feel like
that doesn't seem like the only problems that Cool World has. Like that bunny got fucking abused, man, you know? And
well, because there's other cops, like, cause then the bunny can go to those Keystone cops whose job is to like die, to like get into a car chase and die. Like that's fine. I guess that sort of makes its own amount of sense. But it's like these little things with like Holly saying, it's like, I've always wanted to do it with annoyed. Because when doodles do it together, it doesn't feel like anything. It's like, Jesus, that's hell. That sounds awful. I can't blame you for wanting to fuck annoyed now. And then the script like holds her in disdain. Yeah, it's like she's a villain for wanting to have sex. It's like, what? That's not fair. I want to have sex.
Like the way it starts, like she's kind of more, I guess, built to be like sympathetic and empathetic in a sense where it's like you could understand wanting to feel those feelings and
she's like, I want to touch something real, you know, I want to really taste something, you know, I want to have this experience that like maybe Gabriel Byrne as Jack Deebs can give to me, because he's a horny cartoonist who, you know, in prison for murdering the man his ex-wife was having an affair with, I think it is suggested.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's suggested, I guess, that he's been drawing Cool World, you know, and he's invented it while he's been in prison. But it's also suggested that like Hollywood has been like giving him visions in prison, so that he's just drawing what she's been giving him, so that she can seduce him in, and he's just been putting the visions on paper, which then everyone has been kind of like buying it into. And I do kind of like the idea, and I think Bakshi maybe could have used it in the version he wanted to, of, you know, that, you know, the cartoonist isn't actually this amazing creator. He's someone just like cursed with imagery that is literally like attacking him or trying to pull him into. Like that feels like something that, again, Bakshi would have actually made a character thing. You can tell that he was invested in the Jack Deebs character, but Gabriel Byrne is really like, Brad Pitt is the actual central figure until the third act of this movie. Jack Deebs feels like kind of like he shows up at one point because, you know, he's a tool for Holly, who wants to have sex and, you know, wants to break the rules, but he shouldn't break the rules because, you know, Brad Pitt, what's that other line he gets to? Keep your pencil in your pocket or I'll slap you around and make you piss like a puppy.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. And it's just strange too, because like with Holly's character, she's at first, you know, kind of sympathetic, and then at the end she's just looked at as the complete villain of the whole thing that's brought like chaos to everything because she wanted to, you know, try being with Annoyed. So it feels just a little strange in that sense, and I never really knew exactly what he was trying to say.
Strangely kink-shamey for Ralph Bakshi.
Absolutely,
you know?
Yeah, it's like, come on, Bakshi.
Sex negative movie.
It is, strangely enough. Yeah, it is probably his most like sex negative film, whether he meant to do that or not. It just seems completely unfocused with its narrative, and I don't, entirely know what he was going for by the end of it. It really feels like it doesn't mean a lot or much of anything by the end of this film.
And I feel
there's ideas leading up to it, but then it's nothing.
I definitely feel for Bakshi because he's hobbled a little by Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's like, it almost feels bad to root for, because it's like, oh, you don't want to root for the rich kids across the lake, you know? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Zemeckis got everything he asked for. He got this huge budget, huge release, critically acclaimed. Like, and they were able to use Mickey Mouse in the movie. Like, come on. Like, of course the movie was a hit. Yeah, and Bugs, but like, of course it was good. And then Bakshi, who has to come up with all of these brand new characters to sort of like compete in this sort of Toontown like space, is like, Holly is a somewhat compelling character in this sort of like femme fatale, Jessica Rabbit model. And what's in it? Nails.
I do like when she's introduced doing like this hellish trance-like dance in front of what is like 100 Tex Avery looking howling wolves. He definitely just stole that thing, because it's so funny how all of them are all just like hooting and like staring at her and entranced by her obvious sexual magnetism. Because, you know, there's ultimately is a movie about a guy who really wants to actually fuck Jessica Rabbit, and you will be surprised at how formally not unhinged the movie is, considering that's what it kind of is about.
Yeah.
I know, it's like I almost want to just go back in time and tell Paramount, it's like, hey, your movie's going to be a huge bomb regardless. Can you just let this guy go nuts?
Yeah.
You know,
and
just
if anything,
like get off his back.
Do a little better.
Yeah, it'll be more interesting at least. Because it's you know, she's got Holly, and she's introduced dancing to this like Thompson twins, like play with me, like industrial song, like it's like very unappealing and sort of intimidating. But then all of the like what do they call them, like the hoodlums, like the goons, like her gang,
her little guys that are like sort of Slash, who's like a little like purple like monkey like dude who wears a baby diaper, has a giant head, has Freddy claws for some reason.
He's just they're just like a collection. It's just like Bakshi just put like intimidating details. He just like put it into a blender and divided it up into like 4 characters. It's like one of them's like tough. It's just like there's not enough there. You don't really get to like spend enough time caring about the doodles. Sorry, I don't want to eat shit again. The doodles. You don't like.
Yeah, that's right.
You don't see them be funny or charming, or like you don't care about them ever. You care about them so little that I called them Toons, like a fucking
yeah.
No, there's so little personality. Well, because they're such an afterthought. They're so clearly just like, you know, animate. Like some of them are you know, fun and unconventional and charming to look at because it's like, you know, they let an animator just like make some random fun. But ultimately, you know, it doesn't have that control. It doesn't have that sense of like, you know, that passion for we're really going to construct this thing to the most expert degree we can. It's just, it does feel sort of random and kind of mismatched, and you know, like, because again, some of the pure animated stuff in this movie, it's not like bad. Like I think the cop car chase, the weird like colorful sci-fi dystopia backdrop, some of them look really cool. That ridiculous sex on wheels song while they're doing one of the chases is pretty hilarious. The one character in this who actually does stand out to me, because it actually felt like it might have even been like a Toontown character, is the little rotary telephone who gets super stressed every time he starts ringing and actually has to do his job and actually like go and, you know, give Brad Pitt the phone. Like that, you know, like they clearly wrote a little tiny cute character who would have an inner life of being like, oh my god, I'm ringing, oh my god, I got, you know,
duty calls,
like, you know, like that's funny, and it's crazy how little of that there is, and when it is there, it does feel like it's just, you know, kind of like a random, you know, mismatched thing. The sequence of the movie that I realized what was going wrong is actually the sex scene itself. Because this is the scene that you imagine in Bakshi's movie would be like incredible, and it would be explicit, and it would be
especially
ridiculous.
Finally having the scene where it is literally a human being fucking a cartoon. Like this is his dream.
Yeah,
this is it.
He would go all out, and it would be transgressive. It would be this transformative experience. Like if he was doing it in his Fritz the Cat era, like this would be the craziest thing anyone has ever put on screen. And what do they do in this? It's just, you know, slow, like slightly implied in some cutoff shots that the Kim Basinger cartoon is having sex with great Gabriel Byrne, and they're breaking all the laws. Because again, even to have the visceral impact of them breaking the laws is kind of essential to the story that they're telling. So it's crazy that they don't actually do any of this. And then they cross-cut to this gag of all these characters you don't care or know anything about, like just trying to do like the slapstick bit where they're trying to like watch. So like Holly promised we could watch. So they're like, you know, building up all of these, you know, objects so that they can climb up and get a view in the window. And I was sitting there going, man, that is where you can tell that, you know, the studio writers went, what if the cute cartoon characters were doing a slapstick gag where they, you know, it was all about could they watch the sex scene, and it wasn't actually about the insanely transgressive, transformative sex scene that like defines the entire movie is written about, you know?
Like this is the moment, and it's the Bakshi moment. So it's just wild that they undercut it with that kind of stuff. That was kind of one of the examples I was talking about earlier, where things just feel kind of like an afterthought or disconnected in that way, and they're just kind of taking away from the scene that you should be focused on.
Yeah, this should be hornier. It should be crazier.
Absolutely.
You know, this is Bakshi, baby. What are you guys doing?
There's also some like some dialogue every once in a while that I kind of enjoy, but then again, there's something that immediately precedes it that kind of just cuts it away. Like there's a line that I think Holly says where she's like, I'm made of ink, but I'm no dream. And I'm just like, that's kind of cool. Yeah. And then the moment after that, she says something like, welcome to the longest dream that you'll ever have, or something. I'm like, but you just said it wasn't a dream. And that doesn't have any connection, or like, it's not a play on words. It's just like a legitimately contradicting line. So I don't know. There's certain things in here that are almost like smooth and then not. And then it's very strange.
The movie we're watching is like the 40th draft of, you know, just like a million like studio notes that were just like, hey, can we clear this up? Remember, I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way. Can you just put like 10 lines like that and just make Holly say, it doesn't matter if it relates to anything.
Right, exactly. It just needs to be mysterious, and it doesn't matter if it literally contradicts the line said immediately before it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, there's I do like the I drew you, I made you, I can erase you. You wouldn't erase me, baby. You know, you're too hungry for what I got. You know, and her all of the, again, part of the Bakshi that you're just gonna have to accept every time you watch one of his movies is that he's gonna have extended shots of just like a cartoon character like stroking their leg, or making a sensual movement of some kind. Like he's so much more openly.
And that's how Holly moves just constantly. I mean, she's never
pouring his fetishes on the screen just all the time.
Like she's never like the character of Holly is never not, talking in this kind of soothing sexual way, or, moving her hips around, even if she's doing normal walking. There's never a moment where she's not like sexualized, essentially. And it's just kind of built into her character, which kind of leads me, I guess, into something that we were talking about earlier and we didn't get into detail of, which is when she transforms and Kim Basinger now has to do the Hollywood performance. And there's it's weird because I'm kind of mixed in it. Like, I think it's not very good, but I think what she's trying to do is still
makes sense.
She's still trying to give off that animated kind of sexy, slithering kind of character that Hollywood would be easy. It's easy to do when she's an animated character. And I think she's trying to emulate that, but it just comes off as a little bit strange and a little bit awkward sometimes, and a little bit,
and it's like we kind of know that Kim Basinger can do it. I mean, she would win her Oscar for LA Confidential, playing a femme fatale character, right? Exactly. And she was just in Burton's Batman, where we know that she can act in like kind of like a heightened animated world like that. And it's so bizarre that the actual crossfade transition itself from the drawing to Kim Basinger is actually sort of interesting. Like I think that's actually kind of well done, but her performance as the cartoon in human form is just, I don't know how to describe it. There's because it totally makes logical sense that she's trying to be silly and animated still, even though she's in human form, and it being inconsistent and feeling off is probably the point, but it feels further than that to me.
Right.
Like she's going a little silly baby with it in a way that just is like not easy to watch. And I actually just was like kind of like uncomfortable watching her act with other live action performances. And part of this too, from what I understand, is Kim Basinger was actually partially taking over production by the sounds of it, that she actually wanted to do some of the rewrites for her character and was trying to make it more of like a kid's movie. And
which cannot be done with this.
Yeah, so that is
absurd when I read that.
Yeah, so like that could be also is that she's maybe leaning a little bit too much into the movie she wants it to be versus
you think it was almost like she was
everyone
going
else
for a silliness that no one else was.
Yeah,
I could see that.
I was gonna say,
so I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah,
she was clearly rotoscoping Holly when Holly was animated. Like Holly moved. No character in this movie moves like Holly does. She is absolutely, obviously rotoscoped, and I think it's cool. I think it sort of like works really well, and it sets her apart from a lot of the other doodles. Because she feels more adult, she feels more human, she feels like you can sort of understand why she would long to leave this world and go with people who are more like her. But then when the switch happens, it is this bizarre, because you're right, it's not even like she's giving the same rotoscope performance. She's just playing a new character all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's a good way to. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. There is a little bit of a disconnect between the cartoon Holly and Kim Basinger's Holly in the sense that it's like she didn't quite capture the same essence, I guess. I don't know. It is weird when she makes that transition. It's a noticeable
so
change.
What we're saying, 3 guys on a podcast are saying that a real woman is not as good as a cartoon, ultimately, is what I want everyone to take away from
That's
this.
Right. That's right. Start your
I've said it before.
Kim Basinger, do better. Look more like Hollywood. You know, come on. Although I will say some of the more amusing parts are Kim Basinger in the ridiculously sexualized outfits in the real world, and with Gabriel Byrne like introducing her to like her neighbors, and you just have Kim Basinger being like, "I'm real."
Yeah,
you know, in like the ridiculous outfit. Like there's some stuff that kind of works about it. Like again, conceptually, this works. You know,
totally. I don't want to just say like we're like shitting on Basinger here. I think it's mostly in the first like the initial transformation. And then when she gets into the real world and she's interacting with more people, like I didn't think the like the stage performance that she does to kind of like show off her skills in the real world, I think is pulled off decently well. And I did find it funny that she keeps turning into like a clown version of herself because, you know, they can't quite be in the real world. It's like unnatural for them or something. So yeah, it's not to say it's all a loss. I just think that first initial thing is kind of strange.
I can definitely see from her performance the movie she was imagining in her head, you know, that she was trying to take over. And I don't like it that much, but I get it. You know, I think it's like a completely like it has the right to exist. Like I can see what that would be and everything that's going. I do think it's like it's just not in conversation with the rest of like maybe there's something to say there of like, oh, she's too realistic when she's a doodle and she's too cartoony when she's annoyed, but the movie never really rises to that, you know. It never really rises to the level.
Yeah, you can't it's like we were saying with Brad, it's like you can't even blame both these stars in a sense because it seems like everybody on set was just doing their own thing in a way. It's like they had their own idea.
We'll fix it all in the animation process. Don't worry, it'll all make sense.
Yeah, it does feel like that. Like they all had their own vision of what this was supposed to be, and then in post they tried their absolute best to put it together.
In A.S. Hammer's review of Joker, he describes Joaquin Phoenix as an undirected actor, and that's all I could think watching this was just like nobody was told what to do. And there are like Charlie Adler does the voice of the Spider, who's like Brad Pitt's like sidekick, like the like sort of the baby Nails. Herman sort of. Oh yeah, Nails. He and like I think he's good. He did all the voices on Cow and Chicken. Like that guy's a good voice actor. And you can tell watching this, it's like nobody directed him what to do. He just has a funny voice he's doing, but it was never, he hasn't been told like, this is how this connects to the story. You know, this is how this fits here.
Yeah. And his energy is not, and his energy is not even close to like what he's probably supposed to be bouncing off of with Brad. So he does feel
I wouldn't be surprised if they've never met. Yeah.
Like he had no idea what kind of character that he was supposed to be.
Yeah, versus Zemeckis having all of the animated voice actors actually hitting their lines on set, which I don't remember if we brought that up or not. But like Charles Fleischer as Roger Rabbit was doing all those voices with Bob Hoskins, like actually in the room with him and, you know, delivering lines back and forth. There's actually even behind the scenes where you can see Charles Fleischer like in a little bunny ears and shit like that, where they were using him as like reference. And
so you can get genuine reactions.
Yeah, because he was like, I want you to hear the ridiculousness of, you know, what this character is actually saying to you, because that's how you get a reaction out of an actual actor. So that, you know, you act. So then when you draw it later, it's like, oh my God, Bob Hoskins is looking at something insane, you know, and you don't get that from any of the live action performances in this.
Yeah.
No, this movie's almost like a cautionary tale for when we talk about stuff that's been lost in film. You know, when people are like, wow, movies aren't horny anymore. And it's like, well, but hold on. You're surely you're not asking for Cool World, or when they're like, well, nobody does like practical effects anymore. Yeah, Monkey, but like nobody does practical effects anymore. It's like, well, hold on, because in Cool World they do it sort of aimlessly, like, and it doesn't actually look that good. Like,
You would not believe. I can't. I didn't get a chance to bring this up yet. Cool World. Do you guys know who shot Cool World?
I don't.
This will
right
blow
now.
your minds if you don't know who shot Cool
I'm about
World.
to.
It was John Alonzo who shot Chinatown.
And Scarface and Harold and Maude. What the fuck, dude?
And Scarface and Vanishing Point. Yeah, like the perfect twist of fate to all of this is I think this might be one of the worst looking movies that John Alonzo ever shot. And for Roger Rabbit to be such an affectionate, loving recreation of like a cartoon Chinatown, and to have the actual guy who shot Chinatown shoot Cool World, and it just like kind of looked like it was vomited onto the screen, which is not to say there isn't like some of the animation is cool.
Yeah.
Some of the, funky little, live action sort of cartoon looking sets that they did for some of the shots are, there was some effort put in there.
Yeah.
But it's just how it's all been blended and how the overall look of the movie is just, it's not very good.
It feels like a movie that was like all the sets were built inside of like a space where kids go to play laser tag or something.
Totally.
It's just got that
yeah, it has that chintziness to it.
That's spot on. That is spot on. Because when I was honestly thinking that in a sense when it's the first scene with Brad and Kim, or when she's a cartoon though, and it's got like these cardboard cutouts of couches and things like that. But yeah, it's even got this kind of dark purple lighting to it a little bit, which is very reminiscent of like a laser tag thing for sure. That's funny.
And the third act of this movie is just like I was actually kind of blown away that, because there's some stuff they set up that kind of makes sense. Like the whole deal with Brad Pitt having to be like, oh my God, the human in the cartoon fucked, and now they're both kind of like half human, half cartoon, and, rampaging into the human world and like breaking the delicate balance that the two worlds have that I meant to keep them apart. That's what I'm policing. And, and he's trying to also explain to, Lynette or whatever that, he doesn't actually want to go back. Like he may be human, but, it hurts over there. It's lonely over there. There's war over there, which is, again, a thing it just never really actually follows through on. But you can imagine a version where Bakshi actually leaned into that darkness of like Brad Pitt escaped to the Toon World because he didn't want to, he couldn't cope with this real life thing. But I was just blown away that the rest of the movie is genuinely generic PG movie, kids movie tidy up, where it's like Holly is hunting for a spike at the casino, which might accidentally like blow up the two universes and like complete her transformation to human, or like unleash all the cartoons into the human world. And it's just Gabriel Byrne and Brad Pitt have to team up to stop her from doing that. They even throw in like a kids movie teen girl next door character who's there to like tag along with the hijinks. She's like, I have a car, I can drive you guys to the casino. And I was like, what is this writing?
Yeah. It's strange that like Who Framed Roger Rabbit is essentially saying that we should respect the craft and the art of animation and these characters and all of that. And with this, it seems to accidentally, in my opinion, but it still says it, where it's like, fuck animated characters. They're evil. They bring chaos. They can't coexist with human beings.
Segregate those motherfuckers.
Yeah, burn them down. Like they're basically like on board with the bad guy and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. They're almost like, Cool World should be genocided.
Yeah,
like, it's
which,
just wild.
if that was the point he wanted to make and he leaned into it in a horror style, maybe that could have been interesting. Sure. But again, it all just feels like happenstance that he arrived at these scenarios,
Yeah, totally.
It's I was going to say earlier, it is funny to imagine, I laughed watching it, that like they do set up by like Brad Pitt has PTSD from the war. And then he goes to Cool World and he spends 50 years in Cool World. And I guess he just gets over his PTSD because he just had 50 years to like go to therapy.
I was kind of mad because I'm like, you obviously set that up in the introduction. So I'm like, that seems like a pretty core part of his character. And then I really don't think it's ever brought up or even mentioned. Is it? Like, am I mistaken?
Just that line where he says there's war over there before he goes back.
Okay,
like, that's it.
But it's like
it's fucking insane.
You live in Cool World. People are cutting their heads off, and like the cops are being called over dice games. Like they have war over here too.
Yeah, like it seems the same. So I just don't understand why he wouldn't be going through this same kind of mental torment. And that was one of the more interesting aspects of his character. So it was so weird to just like be like, yeah, we'll never mention that again, and we'll just deal with his conundrum of wanting to fuck a cartoon but not being able to because of his quote unquote morals, I guess.
Yeah, well, because it felt like they were at one point going to be like, again, he escapes into this animated world of things that aren't real, and he needs to learn to grow up and go back and cope with real life or something like that. And then same thing with the creator who fucks the cartoon. Like maybe he has to disassociate himself from the crazy visions that are haunting his brain or whatever. And it's just, again, it feels like it sets up arcs you could imagine Bakshi kind of digging himself into in complicated ways. And it's like the ending is Pitt chases Kim Basinger up a staircase. They hang out in a hotel. He falls off a balcony and dies. And then the scientist cartoon just goes, actually, Brad Pitt was never the main character. It was Jack the whole time, who's now a superhero that behaves nothing like how his character behaved before he was a toon.
Yeah, that was
oh
weird.
My God, a doodle. I just caught myself doing it.
You're out of here. You're out of here. We're done.
Welcome to the club.
And it just, this whole third act is just like, it's just, again, it's just, it feels like a collection of studio notes.
Yeah, because I found that weird too, that Gabriel turns into like this cliched kind of superhero with the like huzzah voice, like that kind of thing. And I did kind of find him funny in a way because he like does this, like he bounces around and it's kind of a funny depiction of a giant muscular superhero, but it has, like you said, no connection to the cartoonist or anything that we've seen before. His voice completely changes, and there's nothing like, I don't think it's Gabriel doing it.
It doesn't sound like
I imagine it's supposed to be, but it doesn't sound like it. And also that scientist, that part where he's just like, you know, he's becoming the hero he was always destined to be. And part of me went, what was that? Was that in this movie? Was that?
Yeah, that seemed like
it comes from a different movie.
Yeah, that seemed like a studio wrap up too, where they're like, well, we need a designated obvious hero, so we'll just literally have a line that's like,
make it the horny cartoonist who the movie was clearly written to be critical of at a certain point, because it was supposed to be a movie about his half cartoon son coming back to kill him for abandoning him. You know, like it's just, and instead they were just like, what if we just made like a really bad Gremlins sequel? Where like just all the creatures got out into the real world, they're maniacally laughing, they're causing chaos and doing antics, and you know, there's a couple, you know, attempts at gags that you could see being kind of like funnier if the comedic timing was there, like the casino blackjack table when all the humans start turning into doodles, and like the guy's like, hit me, and the guy just punches him in the face. You know, you could imagine if it was like Popeye doing it or something, that could have been funny. Or they recreate the dogs playing poker, because the casino, all the guys playing poker at the casino all turn into doodly dogs. And so, you know, like there's even a bit in the background where you can see a giant version of like the cow jumping over the moon, which is just some gag that, you know, one animator was like, he said do anything, I don't know, throw it in the background, you know. So like there's some things to look at and there's some charm, but the whole set piece, again, just feels like a giant studio note to make a movie that nobody involved was making until all of a sudden they were, you know, and they were asked to shoot it. And Brad Pitt isn't even in it. He just died. He's dead for this whole sequence.
Yeah, he dies. And they show it kind of like off screen too. Like he falls off the skyscraper, the apartment building or whatever. And then they don't show the body for a while.
And Hollywood murders him, which is like, I don't know. That feels like a you know, again, they're very much villainizing Hollywood by the end.
Yeah, they really are. And then the wrap up with Brad Pitt, where it's just like, we won't see his body for 15-20 minutes, don't see it make impact with the ground or anything, and then we'll just have the convenient wrap up of, well, not only if you have sex with Annoyed you become a human, but if you get killed by a cartoon you become a cartoon. So that works, I guess. That's convenient. And he is able to, you know, actually have sex with his cartoon girlfriend. The
rules are not as established in as economical,
and once again they feel like an afterthought.
You know, Yeah.
So like that's a clean wrap up. We need Brad Pitt to come back because that would be he's our star, I guess, or whatever it was supposed to be.
Yeah. I do think I was going to say earlier that scientist character drove me fucking insane. He feels like he was created and existed only to facilitate studio notes.
Yeah,
they were
to
like,
get to one place to the other.
Yeah, how did Brad Pitt get here? Okay, we'll have a scientist say, this is interesting. It's like,
and then the scientist put a spike in the casino, and that's the thing that is like maintaining the two worlds, you know.
Yeah, and he doesn't. Once again, it's the same thing with a couple other characters. He doesn't show up. He shows up at the beginning to facilitate the transfer, and then he shows up at the very end to once again continue the plot.
Become the hero you were destined to be.
Yeah, to give the exposition of what we were supposed to care about this whole time, apparently. Yeah, so it was he's bizarre. Yeah, he's just, there's a lot of things in here that are studio notes, and it's very obvious. Some of the time you can like mask these things a little bit better, but this one just, you almost see the producer like slapping it onto the screen in front of you.
Yeah.
And no one spoke up to any producer and was like, you do realize that by combining Bakshi's weirdo perverse shit and your generic studio notes that you are ending on the happy ending being that, you know, interracial relationships are bad and the world should stay segregated, and, you know, and then what? A pencil dick line followed by a David Bowie credit song for some reason.
Yeah, and the relationship with the cartoonist and Holly is really strange, established at the end too, because he's the superhero guy now, and he's, you know, whatever, saved the day or some shit, and he's looking for like a house, and he's really enthusiastic, and Holly is not at all, and so now she's just in this like forced relationship with this overly excited muscular superhero guy. I don't even get what, you know, what's being said there, if anything's being said. It's just very strange.
It also drove me nuts. That superhero doesn't look like Gabriel Byrne.
I know.
It doesn't feel like they're exaggerating his features in any sort of way. It's just like a new guy. So essentially Gabriel Byrne's soul is dead and this new avatar is just taken over. Like,
that is kind of what it feels like. Yeah, like they've just completely destroyed whatever human soul he had, and now this is like it's taken over, like an alien or something.
Yeah, there's just no conversation. It's like, he's a pervert. Turn him into like R. Crumb or something, you know, like turn him into like have him turn into a pervy cartoon. There's certainly
turn him into that French cat or that French skunk that like was a total perv. Yeah, turn him into that. That would have suited it perfectly.
Yep, but that is Cool World, pivoting towards the reductive rating round here. This one ended up in kind of like the maybe the solid 2 territory for me. Yeah. I didn't hate it, because I will say there's enough in here from Bakshi's weird, horny, R-rated horror movie version about a comic book artist who wants to fuck his own cartoon that there is, you know, even in its messy form, it's like, I'm kind of impressed that, you know, anyone spent money on anything related to that premise. And, you know, that some people on set tried to make it happen, maybe even some famous people you recognize. And, you know, there's enough, you know, the actual, again, not the same amount of effort, but there is some charm to, you know, the crude Bakshi animation style. There's a couple things in here that if they had been developed, they would be cool ideas. I do like the idea of like a cartoonist who's haunted by visions. And, you know, if they wanted to make like the anti-Toon World version of the movie, if they were trying to be like the evil Roger Rabbit, that might have actually been cool. Yeah. If they would lean into actually making those points and not feeling like they accidentally got there by, you know, just doing a bunch of really, you know, silly PG, you know, studio executive notes. And, you know, it's just, there's elements in there where it's like Brad Pitt has PTSD. Brad Pitt is policing interracial relationships. It feels like details that Bakshi would playfully use if he had the freedom to do so. Mm-hmm. And instead they just become like incomprehensible and lead to nothing. and most of the actual filmmaking, because Bakshi was being so compromised, in the actual production process. It's not like the movie was taken from him in post or something. Like, they were making him rewrite scenes and shoot scenes he didn't want to shoot. And as a result, I think you can feel that lifelessness to Bakshi's direction. It doesn't feel like he's directing actors. It doesn't feel like he cares about composing sets and environments to actually match things he's going to eventually animate. It's all flat, very unenergetic. It actually doesn't even really have that many jokes, which was like maybe the most surprising thing. So I was like, Roger Rabbit is like joke per minute count is like ridiculous. They find sly ones in the corner of frames on top of the other ones that they're doing that are more overt. And yeah, this is just, I don't know. That makes it a little bit harder. If this was even just a funnier movie, it might be more enjoyable. But it's weirdly kind of just annoying and kind of dull, which is just a very strange way to describe, in my opinion, Bakshi, who I don't find, actually maybe I find him a little annoying as a guy, but I don't find him that dull of a guy. I actually do find not dull usually. Watching his other stuff, I am mesmerized by the sheer ambition and the weirdness and the psychedelicness of what he was interested in depicting. And even if I don't like it, I respect on some level, that he was like, I'm willing to just put my fetishes on screen for you and I don't care what you think of them. And and it's just if you're gonna hire that guy, let him do the thing that he does. And they didn't do that. And they made a confusing mess that's half weirdo Bakshi and half just generic nothingness. And so it ended up in the 2 territory for me.
I'm kind of in the same boat too. I think it's a 2. I almost kind of liked it, but there's just so many things fall short. And seeing some other Bakshi movies, you can just tell that there's way too many cooks in the kitchen with this. They are not allowing Bakshi to do what he wants to do. And I can kind of exactly. And I can kind of understand like being a little bit cautious about Bakshi. I do understand that, but in that case, it'd be like you said, why the fuck would you hire him then? If you're not gonna hire the man.
Why would you say yes? He came to you with this script and you said yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's actually what happened.
Yeah,
is he's like, I have an idea for my Roger Rabbit. Let's do it.
Yeah,
money signs went up.
It's ridiculous to hire an auteur and then be like, now just do like the generic shit that we tell you to do. It's bizarre, and I don't know why studios do it. It's just always mind-boggling to me. But
they love doing it though. They still do it all the time.
I know.
They still
to this day. They've never learned their lesson.
Yeah, but you can still see a little bit of that Bakshi charm, and like his animation is in there. Those kind of ideas are there, and I do always love seeing that. It was kind of still fun to watch. Brad Pitt try to do this kind of like noir detective thing. It doesn't really work, but it's interesting to watch. Like there is one line at the end,
and I'll say it, rotoscoped Holly, kind of a good character. I think it would work in another movie.
I agree. I just don't know like where they went with her in the second half, but I agree that I think her setup is very interesting and cool. And I do like
should
her
have been
design.
sex positive.
Yes.
She should have like blown up the world in an orgy, and it should have been the greatest, most psychedelic, amazing thing. And everyone was like, wow, we should leave the world this way. That should have been the story.
Exactly. It should have ended. That's exactly. It should have ended with a giant orgy of cartoons and humans just going at it worldwide. And that should have been the end. But instead, it's the opposite.
It would fix his PTSD because it would create world peace.
Yes.
Like, we're writing this as is.
This is so much better. Like, holy hell. Come on now. We need to remake Cool World.
PTSD goes away if you get it from a war and war is abolished. You no longer have PTSD.
Yes,
there you go.
Exactly.
And all you have to do is everyone fuck.
Yep. Yeah. Giant orgy. That would help it. I guarantee it.
Which actually, weirdly enough, I think was the thesis of that movie Sausage Party, which wasn't very good. So maybe we're in a bind, actually.
Yeah.
You know what? That's exactly correct.
Maybe it was, but maybe it was just the jokes. Maybe the overall premise is okay, but we just need to make it not as on the nose. But anyway, this just falls short in too many places. I think that if Bakshi was able to actually have his true vision and more of a hands-on approach to this, that it would have been just interesting, because he's a really interesting filmmaker, really interesting animator. I just producers, they just need to shut the fuck up and let creators do their thing. And you can just see it on screen constantly throughout the whole movie. Things just feel disconnected, and like so many things feel like an afterthought. So yeah, it's going to be a 2, unfortunately, but I still would recommend people check out Bakshi, because the first one that we did was on the Patreon bonus ep, and we did, like we said, Fritz the Cat and Wizards, and both of those are pretty, like, really interesting and, you know, transgressive and can be annoying at times, depending on your outlook, but there's just there's actual heart and authenticity, and you can tell that Bakshi had his full vision there, whether you love it or not. Yeah, recommend Bakshi, but just not necessarily recommend this. Maybe just for the spectacle of it and just that it's an odd novelty, but I don't think it's very good.
Yeah, for you, Branson.
I gotta agree. I'd say if you like Bakshi at all, if you haven't seen any Bakshi, you watch this, and you liked it even a little bit, you're in luck. It all gets better.
Yeah,
it's all uphill
from Cool World.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give this. I'm so agnostic to star ratings, but I'm gonna give it a 2.5 because I'd say it's earned it for me, at least. Of like, it makes me red in the face furious for all the executive meddling that happened for this. It's just like, maybe it would have been great, maybe it wouldn't have. I just would have loved to know. I would love to have seen what it could have been. It's a mess. It's muddy. Nobody is directed in a fair way, but still, at a certain point, I've seen this. I think this was the 9th time I've seen this movie. Like, I can't lie. You know, it's like I am always drawn back to it. I do watch it a lot. I think it's a really interesting movie to look at, and it's like, I like, as frustrating as this movie is for me, it is a headspace I sort of like to visit pretty often. So I can't go lower than a 2.5. That's as low as I can go, and that's where I'm going.
Nice. Oh, and before we totally wrap it up, Josh, you mentioned earlier on if Bakshi ever did like any other live action or anything, and apparently he did 2 years after a movie called Cool and the Crazy, and it's with Alicia Silverstone and Jared Leto, which is wild.
It's a TV movie, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's 85 minutes long, I see. But regardless, that's interesting enough for me. I probably will check that out eventually. It also has
he did it for Showtime, apparently.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
and it aired on September 16th, 1994. On TV only. So he did a direct-to-video like kind of thing. I'm curious. I wonder if anyone has that. Let us know. The ratings on here aren't very good, but not many people have actually seen it.
Yeah,
so,
I'd like to check it out. You know? I mean, it's interesting with having Jared Leto and Alicia Silverstone and John Hawkes be directed by
is
Ralph
in there
Bakshi.
too. What the fuck?
Yeah, and his character name is called Crazy, so that's fun.
Damn.
So yeah, I'm gonna check that out. But anyway.
Hell yeah. Well, yeah, I think that will wrap it up for this week's episode. That was Roger Rabbit from 1988 and Cool World from 1992. Thanks so much, Branson, for joining us and for bringing these films with you and lending us your knowledge of animation. If you've got anything to plug while you're here, this is usually where we have you do that. And I know that you are currently are you still open for commissions? Do you have any commissions open? I saw that you were doing that.
Oh yeah, but I would say by the time this airs, I'm going to have to have closed them. I got good news, bad news.
I forgot about that. We're recording these early, yeah.
A little bit. I got swamped, which is great and exciting, but it's also bad because now I've been swamped, and so I won't be able to take any more. Eventually, one day, I might open them back up. If this is the segment, listen to Rude Tales of Magic. It's my podcast I do. We play D&D very loosely, very comically. These Those Stars of Space. It's with the same cast, but it's like a Star Trek parody. Buy my book, Hell Was Full. Watch Swan Boy on FX. Those are the big ones.
Hell yeah.
Beautiful.
Check out Swan Boy. He's a nice guy. I like that guy.
Good little guy.
Yeah. Yeah. For our listeners, we are going to be back in 1 week's time over on the Patreon feed, where we are going to be talking about some sandy purgatories. We are going to be doing a double feature of Night Tide, starring Dennis Hopper from 1961, directed by Curtis Harrington, about a woman falling in love, or sorry, a man falling in love with a mermaid. Talking about horny guys again. Yeah. But that movie served as an inspiration for The Lighthouse, for anyone who liked that movie and liked that kind of the weird mermaid imagery that kind of appeared in that. So we are going to be talking about Night Tide and pairing it with a film from 1962 called Carnival of Souls, which is kind of actually a hard sort of like surrealist thing to describe, because it's basically just kind of like a woman who survives a car crash, like walking through like essentially like a carnival. Yeah. And there's a lot of organ music, and it's one of the most like gorgeous and like haunting like kind of like 70-minute films that I've seen, and I'm excited to finally talk about it. I find it like strangely kind of despairing of a movie, but it's very, very gorgeous.
Yeah, I'm excited to re-tackle that because I've seen it a couple times, and it's something that I've always just found myself thinking back on. So
yeah, it's got a strange vibe, and I know that the director has like a weird history where like he mostly made like weird like industrial like PSAs or something like that. He did like a Halloween safety video or something, and then he was like basically he's an industrial filmmaker who made like a low budget like project, and it's pretty amazing. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week over on the Patreon feed, and then in 2 weeks time, as sort of alluded to, we are recording this episode very early because for anyone who's listening to this, I think Jamie is actually still on tour with his band, going around singing songs at various venues across the United States. So we are recording this in advance, and I actually don't know what's happening in 2 weeks time, and I will have a better idea by the time we actually post these epides.
But we will let you know, we promise.
I don't know what it is, but it will be in the description of next week's episode no matter what. Yes. So look forward to that. But that being said, that wraps it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.
Keep it sleazy.